Good morning and welcome back to another of our We Are Developers live days. Now, if this is your first time joining us for one of our live days, then I'm going to fill you in a little bit as to what to expect from this. But if you've managed to make your way here, then I guess you figured out a little bit about what today is about. So all of our live days are free virtual events where we hope to help you upgrade your skills in a certain area. Now, today, as you can tell, we've got a specific topic like every time. So we're looking at .NET today. So this is .NET Day. Now, before we get stuck in, we are on a jam-packed kind of schedule. We've got a lot to give you this morning. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of what to expect. Now, before we do that, I just want to reiterate what you saw for those that were eagerly waiting for this stream to kick off. You would have seen our code of conduct slide. Now, I just want to give you a little bit of meat on the bone with that, I suppose. So in essence, our code of conduct is exactly the same as it would be if you were to come to one of our live events like the World Congress or Code 100. And in essence, the Code 100 is, be kind and be respectful to each other. Now, as we are all in a virtual environment and we're all online, we're all working from offices or from, like me, home offices, then, the same rules apply, right? We want everybody who's in the chat to be respectful and kind to each other. And just remember that something you might think is a joke and you might think is funny might actually hurt somebody's feelings. So, of course, we won't tolerate things like racism, sexism, etc. And we would hope that everybody here would abide by that. And of course, we don't want to have our moderators have anybody get silenced or banned from the chat. Okay, so let's be respectful, let's be kind, and let's, of course, give our speakers the respect they deserve. Now, some of that, when we get to what those speakers will be about, some of that will be interactive in that we will have some live demos for you, but we'll also, of course, have an opportunity for you in the chat to ask questions, which we'll be able to ask our speakers in the Q&A at the end of each of their sessions. So let's have a look at what we're actually going to be covering today. Now, first of all, our day today is in partnership with two fantastic organizations. And first of all, we've got our Thessaloniki.net meetup group. So shout out to those I'm sure are watching from offices and locations all across Europe, or particularly in Greece. So big shout out to the Thessaloniki. That's a tough one to say fast. The Thessaloniki.net meetup group. So thank you again for sponsoring this event. Also, we are in partnership with some of our friends in Berlin. So we've got Black in Tech Berlin, and we're going to give you later on a discount code and some giveaways, if you like, for the Black in Tech Europe Summit. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that event a little bit later on. And again, just to say thank you to both of our partners there for teaming up with us for today's event and helping get it off the ground and to promote the day and let other people know about it. So thank you to those groups for being involved. Okay, so as I said, today's .NET. Now, full disclosure, I am not from a .NET background. So for those of you that might be in the chat who are like me and are not from that background, we're going to learn a lot. But even if you are somebody who's very comfortable and .NET is your go-to, you're going to learn a lot. Okay, so let's look at who we're actually going to be hearing from. So as always, we've got experts from a number of different backgrounds using .NET in different ways in various different environments. And they're, of course, going to all teach us different things in each of their sessions. So let's take a look at what we've got. So starting us off, and we have got our speakers here raring, but very patiently waiting in the wings to kick off our first session. So our first session is going to be from Ambesh Singh from VisionNet and Sachin Kumar from Microsoft. Now, in this session, we're going to hear about C# 13 Unleashed. So this is going to be a live demo. We're going to see the top 10 cutting edge features from Ambesh and Sachin, who've very kindly given up their time to share their expertise in this first session. So that's going to kick off in just under 10 minutes, and that'll take us up till 11 a.m. Now, you'll see if I do get any of these times wrong by an hour, my excuse is that I'm in the UK. I'm probably I'm one of the very few people, that's watching from the UK because we're an hour behind. Okay, so most of our team and also our customer base, our developers are across mainland Europe, but I'm holding it down for the developers here in the UK, but I am an hour behind. So for me, it's only 9 a.m. So if I get the times wrong, feel free to correct me in the chat. So at 10:15 your time, we've got Ambesh and Sachin kicking us off. Straight after that, so at 11 a.m. European time or 10 a.m. UK time, we've got Ryan Nino Dizon. And Ryan is a software architect and a Microsoft MVP, and he's going to tell us all about .NET microservices in Azure container apps. So we've got another 45-minute session there. After that, at 11:50, we've got a very short break where I'm going to give you some tips and tricks. Now, you've probably seen in previous weeks, we've covered things, we try and cover things that will be useful for developers across different languages, frameworks, ecosystems. So today we're going to focus on, how would I phrase this really, but something that none of us can escape, regardless of what kind of development we do. So we're going to look at JSON, and we're going to look at what we can do with it that's not obvious. You know, there's things that are not immediately obvious. When we start working with JSON, we all tend to do things a certain way, and we may get into certain habits that may actually be quite long-winded ways of doing things. So I'm going to show you a few tips and tricks, and some of them, even I was surprised, you know, when I started doing a bit of research for it, that I thought, how have I not realized this before? So I'm hoping that you have the same thought when I share some of those tips and tricks at 11:50. Our third talk then, we've got Pavel Lukashuk, who is a tech leader and a senior .NET developer, who's going to share his own tips and tricks, but not with JSON, of course, with .NET. Now, Pavel's also going to share with us some quirks. Now, this, I don't know what it is, but for me personally, whenever I hear about quirks with something, I want to watch it. I want to go and find out about it, because these are often things that sometimes people find by mistake, and they might be strange things about a certain language that maybe don't make sense, and these things interest me. So as soon as I saw tips, tricks, and quirks, I wanted to find out more. So we're going to find out more from Pavel at midday, so 12 p.m. Then we're going to take another very brief break, and in this time, I'm going to give you your opportunity to win some tickets to the World Congress 2025. Now, I will just say that prior to this chat, and we've got our speakers patiently waiting, Ambesh, who's one of our first speakers, said to me, I've already seen the link to submit CFPs, but also I've seen the link to get the early bird tickets for the World Congress. Now, this is great for us to hear, because it shows that our communities are excited for the event next year, and that they're sharing those links, you know, on behalf of us as well. So we're really grateful for that, and thank you to those, whether they're WhatsApp groups, Telegram groups, meetup groups, that are sharing those links and helping the development community to find out about the event and how they can be a part of it. Now, you can be a part of it for free. You can get yourself a free ticket to the World Congress. I'll say that word again, a free ticket to the World Congress. Now, maybe I'm lying there. It's not completely free, because you will need to complete one of our Code 100 challenges in order to win that ticket. So I'm going to be giving you the challenge at 12:45. We've got a brief video to explain what the challenge is. I'll show you how you can submit your answers. And these are always really interesting for us, because we obviously see the Google form responses. So then we can see all the different ways that these challenges were solved. And it's always really interesting to see the completely different approaches. And I mean, if you could see these responses, you'd really see how varied they are in terms of how people approach these challenges. So I'll be giving that to you at 12:45. And then our final speaker of the day, we've got Steve Billigan, who is a senior engineer for Uno platform, who's going to be doing a session on .NET apps everywhere. So that'll take us up until the end of today, which will be 1:45 your time, 12:45 UK time. So 1:45 we'll be finishing up. Okay, and that brings us right back to this first session. Now, in a second, I am going to bring our first speakers, Ambesh and Sachin, up on stage, and we might get started just a few minutes early to give them as much time for these live demos as they can. Now, just before we do that, I will reiterate again, you can give us questions that you might have in the chat. Feel free to put those in the chat wherever it is you're watching, and we will pick those up. So we've got moderators looking at the chat, and they'll be feeding those questions back to me, and I can make sure that we can ask our speakers. So without further ado, we are a few minutes early, but I'm just going to bring up on stage Ambesh and Sachin. Thanks for joining me. How are you both?
Thank you, Daniel. I'm really glad to be here, and just more glad because I have my late night coding partner with me. Like we work together, spend a whole night to fixing the issues, and I'm really glad to like he accept my offer and he is sharing the stage with me. So I'm really glad for that one.
That's amazing. So Sachin, you're the late night partner, the late night coding partner. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's afternoon over here. But yeah, we worked before and yeah, we really enjoyed working together. And yeah, I really wanted to present sessions along with Ambe. So I just when he approached me, I just grabbed onto that opportunity.
It's brilliant. And I mean, we're really grateful as well that, we get to kick off the day with some Microsoft representation, considering we're going to be talking about .NET today. So we're really grateful for it as well. Now, in the background, we're just going to set up your presentation, make sure we've got everything ready to go for you, and then we're going to hit the ground running. Now, what we will do is at the end of the session, we'll have about 10 minutes for a Q&A. So again, just to reiterate to anybody who's watching that any questions, put them in the chat and we will get to those at the end so that we don't distract our speakers. Okay, so very shortly, I'm going to take myself off the stage and I'm going to hand over to you both. So Ambesh Singh and Sachin Kumar from VisionNet and Microsoft respectively, over to you to talk about C# 13 Unleashed. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Daniel, again. And thanks again to the VR developers for organizing the .NET Days and providing us the platform to share our stories, our learnings, and have fun with everyone. So I really want to make the session interactive. So if you have any questions, please put this on the chat. And I will be looking in between to the chat. If there would be any, we will be definitely covering up during the sessions. Also, the other part is like the session is meant for the L100 and the 200, so we are not going to really storm your mind, but the idea is that the people who are just entering to this era and C# 13 is a new for them, then this session will definitely add a great values to them. Now, when we talk about the evaluation of the programming languages, which is a thrilling saga, of the innovations, adaptations, and the relentless pursuit of the efficiency. So, among these, the C sharp that is stand out the prime example of from the Microsoft commitments, the offerings developers provide, a powerful, flexibles, and the cutting edge tools, and together with the .NET framework, it has a transformed software development. So why not we are just deep dive into the top 10 cutting edge features of the C# 13. Let's explore the full story of the C sharps from the inceptions to the game changing impact and on the programming world. But before we dive in, I would really like to hand over the platform and the stage to my co-speaker Sachin to introduce himself. So over to you, Sachin.
Thanks, Ambesh. So I am Sachin Kumar, currently working as a software engineer at Microsoft based in India. Uh, Really excited about this opportunity, taking this as an opportunity to learn and share knowledge about the latest features of C Sharp 13 with everyone. So great to be here. Uh, I'm a Microsoft certified trainer and a Microsoft certified solution architect in Power Platform and Azure. So if you have any questions or if you want to connect, just that's my LinkedIn, and I'm happy to talk about Power Platform, Azure, or in matter any other developer technologies.
Thanks, Sachin. So now I would like to briefly introduce about myself before we deep dive into the session. So my name is Ambe Singh, and currently I'm working with the Visionet Germany as a Dynamic 365 and the Power Platform architect. And before this, I worked with the PSN View and the EA Sports. And mostly in my career, I have an opportunity to work with the Microsoft in the various product groups, global consultings, and deliverables. And I'm honored to be an Microsoft MVP in the Copilot and the Power Pages category. So additionally, I also serve as a mentor and ambassador for the 365 Saturdays, and now it's known as a Power Community. I'm passionate about speaking at the global conferences on the topic of Azure, Dynamic 365, Power Platform, and the Copilot. And now let's get started with our session. So C Sharp is a modern object-oriented programming languages that is developed by the Microsoft as a part of the .NET initiative. And the development of the C Sharp began in 1999, led by Andreas Hasselberg, a Danish software engineer who is also known from his great works on the Turbo Pascals and the Delphi. The languages was designed to combine the best features of the existing languages like a C Sharp and the Java, while introduction of the concept to enhance the productivity and the performance. C Sharp was first released in 2000 alongside with the .NET framework. Since then, it has evolved significantly with some of the major updates almost every year. And if you talk about some of the milestones, like very in the next 5 years, from 2000 to 2005, C Sharp come up with a new version called the C Sharp 2.0, which includes the generics, anonymous methods, and the nullable type. Then, in the difference of the 2 years, in 2007, C Sharp 3.0 has been introduced, and Microsoft added the link here, like a language integrated queries, the Lambda expressions, and the extension methods. Then, in again terms of another couple of years, C Sharp 5.0 came in 2012, and this time Microsoft introduced the asynchronous programming with the async and the await keywords. There are a lot of other features also has been introduced, so it is not just coming with a one feature, but I'm just highlighting a couple of the important one. Then in C Sharp 7.0, which has been released in 2017 after 5 years of the 5.0, Microsoft brought up the tuples, pattern matchings, and the local functions. So if we continue our journey to the next, then we have a C Sharp 8.0 in 2019, where we have added the nullable reference types, asynchronous streams, and default interface method. C Sharp 9.0 in 2020, Microsoft introduced the record, init-only setters, and the top-level statements. The very next year, because now Microsoft keep moving every year with a new version. So C Sharp 10.0 in 2021, Microsoft added the globals using directives, file scope namespace, and the record structs. In C Sharp 11.0 in 2022, Microsoft introduced the raw string literals, generic math supports, and the list patterns. In C Sharp 12.0 in 2023, they added primary constructors, collection expressions, and the inline arrays. C Sharp basically continues to be a popular choice for the developers due to its versatility, strong typing, and extensive support for the modern programming universe. Now, if we move to the C Sharp 13. So in the next slide, like if you can see in C Sharp 13, the introduction of the C Sharp 13 was in the July 2024. That brings several new features designed to enhance the flexibility, performance, and the usability. If you want to explore the new feature of the C Sharp 13, then you have to basically install .NET 9 SDK. So you can just download and install the .NET 9 SDK from the official .NET website. Then the next thing is you need an updated Visual Studio. So you need to ensure that you have a latest version of the Visual Studio 2022. You can download it from the Visual Studio websites. Also, the preview version is recommended to access the new features here. So if you don't do this, then you can see over the slide or the screen, you will get some kind of the errors that this basically feature is not supported, and then you have to upgrade the whole framework there. Now let's quickly move to the next one. And here I would really like to just show the first and the topmost favorite C Sharp 13 features, which is the param modifier. So, in C Sharp 13, the param modifier has significantly enhanced to support a wider range of the collection, not just limited to the arrays. This means you can now use the params with any collections types that can be constructed via a collection expressions. If you talk about few of the points here, so you remember that previously the params was limited to the arrays only, but now you can enhance to the collection. And in terms of the uses, when you use the param keywords before a parameters, you can pass a comma separated list of the values to the methods. This make the method more flexible and concise. Also, the enhancement allow for more versatile and expressive code, making it easier to work with the various collection types in the consistent manner. So I would like to ask Sachin if you can just show a quick glance how it looked like in a Visual Studio, how it like a kind of short demo here.
Sure. Thank you, Ambesh. So if you see my screen, this is a simple class where I have a simple concat method. Now, in previous versions of C Sharp, params modifier only allowed uh, arrays to be associated with it. But with C Sharp 13, they have really enhanced it. So now you can associate params modifier with a collection, with a concrete concrete type, interface type, and even your custom type. So if you can see my screen over here, I have a params modifier associated with the read-only span, and I'm calling it by passing individual arguments. So I'm passing just three integers to the method. It implicitly converts it to a span and uses it. But you can also see I have like converted a array into a span and then passing it. So what I wanted to show you over here is instead of read-only span, let's say if you want to use list of integer, or let's say I have a custom type over here, my own class, which implements a INumerable and has a add method. So these are the two requirements for any custom type to be used along with the params modifier. So if I do that, now I can use this my employee collection class in place of the parameter along with the params modifier. This is like really a cool feature that they have introduced. Like they have expanded the boundaries of the params modifier, and it allows for more flexible and powerful use of the params modifier with various collection types.
Thank you, Sachin. So now if we can just quickly move to the next features, which is the caret operators, which was definitely not introduced in C# 13, but it's already in the C# 8.0 for the indexing from the end of the collections. But now it can be used in the object initializers. So these features basically allow you to initialize the elements of a collections from the end. So you can just initialize it end, like you don't have to just go from the beginning and then follow all of the indexes there. What it do, it making your code more intuitive and the concise. So this features basically simplifies the process of initializing the collections, especially when you need to set the values starting from the end. So over to you, Sachin, for the quick demo.
Sure. Thanks, Ambesh. So as you can see my screen, I have a timer remaining class which initializes a buffer of size 10. Now, if I want to use uh, implicit from the end index operator to initialize the array objects from the end, I can use it in the object initializer like this. So prior to this, it was not allowed in the object initializer, but now, as you can see, I have started filling in the array objects from the end. And if I print the objects of the array, I'll just show you in a minute. If I print the objects, it will start printing from the start 9-8 like a countdown, and that's what you will see in the screen. So let me just quickly run this for you and show you. So you can see my screen. It has printed numbers 987 from the start. So 9 is in the first index, but it has been inserted into the array at the last.
That is really great, really great. Thanks for the quick demo, Sachin. So now if we move to the next features, which is basically the new escape sequence in C# 13, that represent the escape characters, like basically all of the Unicodes, which is commonly used to, in the terminals or the console application. So yeah, definitely we don't use generally in the web and the Windows applications. And if you remember that previously you had to use some of the patterns, like an example slash \u 001b, or \x 1b to represent the characters there, which could be less intuitive, and basically it's also prone to the errors if it followed by the valid hexadecimal digits. So then it won't run, and then you will encounter the errors there. And then to avoid this, the new escape sequence simplifies basically working with the terminal outputs, especially when dealing with the ANSI or VT100 escape code. So to you, Sachin.
Thanks, Ambesh. So as you can see my screen, in prior versions of C#, this was the escape sequence for the escape character /u001b. And if we had to use it in a string, this is how we had to use it. But they have simplified it really with C# 13. So /e, this is a character, literal escape character now. Uh, so here in this string, this is an ANSI escape code for the for changing the text color to green. Similarly, /e bracket 32m is the ANSI escape code for changing the text color to green. The first one is red. Apologies. And then /e 0m is the default text color. So if I run this example, you will see that yeah, it indeed uses the escape character and prints it according to the desired color that we have on over here. Let me just run it for you. So you can see this is the comparison. This is my /e 31m is for red, 32 is for green, and the default 0m is for the default color. That's how we use the escape character. Um, and with C# 13, they have really simplified it. Over
That
to you,
is really
Anish.
awesome. I really want to play with the colors, Sachin. But yeah, if I just quickly go to the next one, and the next one is basically in C# 13, the partial properties and the indexer are introduced. So this is one of the major thing, and I really like that one, which is very similar to the partial methods. If you remember, we have worked with that. So the features basically allow you to split the definition and the implementation of the properties or the indexers across the multiple parts of the partial classes. Now, if you talk about some of the key points there, then the first thing is like you can have one part of the class declares the property or the indexer, basically like defining the declaration. And then you have another part for the implementation, which is the implementing of those declaration, which you already did this. So this, the basically the signature for both of the part must match, which is for sure, otherwise it won't run. When we talk about the uses of this this properties or the new features, this is basically particularly useful for the source generators, which can generate the part of properties or indexes while allowing the developers to implement the rest. Now the next thing is, if you ask for this feature enhancement, like if you try to summarize this, so the features enhancement, this features basically enhance the flexibility and organization of your code, especially when you're working with the large projects and using the source generators. Because in the large project, you can clearly see there is a need for that one, that you declare something and then you implement something. And this feature really enhance all of those flexibility and how you organize your complete code structure. So to you, Sachin, for the quick demo.
Thanks, Ambesh. So yeah, as you can see my screen, now with C# 13, we can declare properties also as partial, similar to the partial methods. So this like allows us to split the declaration and the implementation of the property. So if you, as you can see over here, I have a partial class person where I am declaring a property called name. This is called a declaring declaration, where I'm just specifying the declaration of the property, and I'm separating this from the implementation of the property over here. So if you can see over here that this is the next class, person partial class. It contains the implementing declaration, which means that the properties implementation I've specified over here, that it internally uses a private variable called underscore name and then returns, gets and sets it. So yeah, it allows for more flexibility to the developers going forward, in the sense that they can use the declaring declaration and implementing declaration for properties as well, along with other partial members of C#. So yeah, that's a really cool feature that has come along with the C# 13 for us.
Interesting. So now if we will go next, the next is basically the overload resolution priority attributes. This is again the new features from the C# 13 that allowed the libraries authors to specify the priorities of the particular methods overloads. What this attribute do? So the attribute basically help the compilers to decide which overload to be chosen when multiple overloads are already available there, effectively guided the overload resolution process. when we talk about the key points of this feature, so the first thing is why it has been introduced. So it helps to resolve the ambiguities by prioritizing certain overloads over the others, which is particularly useful in the complex APIs or when introducing the new overloads without breaking the existing codes. Because this was very common where the developers team were complaining that, okay, we built this and then it has been overloaded by the other developers code or something like that. In terms of the uses, you apply the overload resolution priority attribute to a method, constructor, or a property to set it, to basically set it priorities. Higher priority of the values are preferred by the compilers during the overload resolutions. So that is important. And then apart from that, if you can talk about these features, is particularly useful for the library authors who want to guide users towards the most efficient or preferred overloads without causing the breaks, without causing or breaking the changes into that one. So to you, Sachin, for the quick overview.
Sure, Ambesh. So as you can see over here, I have a simple class which has two simple methods, print. Uh, these are overloaded methods in the sense that one of the method contains a read-only span as a parameter and the other one contains a integer array as a parameter. Okay. Now, if we want to tell the compiler that uh, the read-only span method should take priority over the integer array parameter overload, so we can use this overload resolution priority attribute, give it a value. The higher the value, the higher the preference that the compiler takes of that particular overload. So at runtime, if you can see over here, uh, I have called the print method and passing individual arguments to it. So when I run it, you will see that it goes to the read-only span overload because of the priority as well as the type that we are passing over here. Now, interesting in the second method, we are creating a implicit array variable, and then that particular array variable I'm trying to pass to my print method. So ideally it should have gone to the second method, but because of the resolution priority that we have told the compiler that always take the read-only span. So in case of ambiguity, it goes to the, when I run it, you will see that it also goes to the span. It prints the span over here. Now in the third one, I am directly initializing an array and passing it. And in this method, in this scenario also, you will see that it goes to the span instead of array. So let me just run and show you this example. So you can see all the three overloads went to the same span method because of the priority attribute that we have used and set in this example. So one call out is you can see if you are not specifying anything, so by default takes the priority of 0. Um, so yeah, just a call out over there. But so let's go to the next one, Ambish.
Okay, do you want to quickly just show the demo? Like, how does it look like? I would be really interested, to have a look for that one.
The span one?
No, the priorities one.
Yeah, that's the priorities one.
Yeah. So just have a quick look.
So all the three overloads calling the same um, overload and printing span over here.
Oh, okay, awesome. And then I think I just saw we have one questions around that what the maximum priorities can be set. It's 99. So the priority basically it's a 32-bit integer values, meaning you can set it anywhere from -2 147 483648 to 2147483647. So it's a really big number. So it's just not limited to the 99. It is really have a the high values, but the default is always 0. So if you don't put anything there, then the default is 0 there. Yeah, thanks, Sachin. So now we can move to the next one. Thank you. And now if we are talking about the next one, so the new system.threading.log type introduced in the C# 13, which is designed to improve the thread synchronization by providing the more efficient and basically the clear way of the handling it. So when we talk about the efficiency, so this log, basically the log type is optimized to minimize overhead and making it more efficient than we used to have the traditional locking mechanism. Next thing is about the clarity, because if you integrate the lock acquisitions and release them in the using statement, which simplify basically the code and reduce the risk of the errors also there. The third thing is when definitely we talk about uses where we can use it. So you can create an instance of the system.threading.log, and you can use it to the enter scope method using the block to ensure that the lock is basically is properly acquired and the released when you just the control go out from there. The new lock type enhancements basically both for the performance and the safety of the multi-threaded application. So this is more specific to the multi-threaded application. If you're not working on those kind of the application, then probably it's not that useful. But right now we have to improve the performance of our application what we have built. So definitely we are approaching and going with those architectures where we can just design something to the multi-threaded way. Over to you, Sachin.
Thanks, Ambesh. So, uh, yeah, in C# 13, as Ambesh mentioned, they have introduced a new lock type. So this is the lock type that they have introduced. If I go to the definition, this is under system.threading. So this is the lock object now that they have introduced, and uh, this provides better thread synchronization through its updated APIs. What that means is, let's say this is our lock statement. Now at runtime, it compiler will identify whether the lock object that you're using, whether it's of type lock or it's a different type. So if it is of type lock, it uses the updated API rather than the traditional APIs like using system.thread.monitor. So in versions prior to C Sharp, you will have to lock on C Sharp 13, you will have to lock on object. But here now you have a dedicated object that you can use for locking. So what this means is in your code as well, you don't have to change much in your existing code if you are migrating from C Sharp 12 or prior versions of C Sharp to 13.1. You just have to update the lock object, and it should work as is. So yeah, this feature allows us to get benefit of the new library by just changing the type of the object. So yeah, it's like less code change and more benefits to the developers.
Yeah, thanks, Sachin, for that one. And now let's move quickly to the next one, which is the method group natural type, basically, which is again a new feature which has been introduced in C# 13, basically to improve the way the compiler handles the method groups during the overload resolutions. This is basically when we talk about the method group. So a method group of is basically a set of the methods that have the same name but with the different parameters. We generally call the method overloads and something that, and this switches basically make the compiler more efficient by refining how it determines the natural type of the method group. Basically, the key points here when we talk about the switches, the first thing is the compiler now prints application inapplicable candidates methods earlier in the process, which considering each scope indivisibility. This means it removes the method that cannot possibly match with the cause, such as the generic methods with the incorrect arbitrary and unsatisfied constraint into that one. Second thing, it's also improved the efficiency because by eliminating the non-matching methods sooner, the compiler can resolve the correct overloads more quickly and accurately, especially in the complex scenarios involving generics there. The basically the natural types which we talked about, the methods group is a natural type is for all the candidates. Methods have this common signature. So if there is no matching candidates are found in the current scope, the compiler basically go and move to the next scope until it's either find the match or exhaust all of the possibilities. So basically, when I try to summarize this enhancement, so this enhancement basically helps to improve the performance and reliability of the method overload resolution in the C sharp. So to you, Sachin.
Thanks. So yeah, as Ambesh mentioned, if this is an example of a method group, so same name, different signature. So these are like overloaded methods. This is called a method group. So the previous behavior of C sharp was of the compiler was that it will construct a full set of overloads or candidates of this particular method group at runtime and look at each of them to identify which one should be used. But with the new behavior, as you can see over here, I am just trying to call the print message without passing any parameter. So the compiler will remove these two candidates at the compile time itself, um, in the sense that it will not use them in the decision making process. It will just discard them and then just goes with the method without any parameter. So this enhances the method resolution, the determination or decision that compiler does at runtime, thereby making it like more efficient and uh, in complex scenarios where you have like multiple or many overloads, right? This helps making the execution faster with more accurate decisions.
Okay, interesting. So now let's move to the next one, which is basically in C Sharp 13, the ref and unsafe in async methods and the iterators, which this basically features allow you to declare the ref local variables and use the unsafe context within the asynchronous methods or the iterators. So this enhancement basically provide a greater flexibility and efficiency in certain scenarios. The first one is when we talk about the ref local variables. So you can now declare the ref local variables or local variables of a ref struct types within the async methods or the iterators. So this is the one. This is the first thing. The second thing, when you do this, however, these variable cannot be accessed across and await boundaries or to the yield return boundaries. So this point need to be marked down. Second thing, when we talk about the unsafe context, so you can use the unsafe blocks with the async methods or with the iterators, but all the yield returns and the await statements must be in the safe context. This ensure the safety rules are not violated in that particular case. In If I would like to summarize this, so in basically, this feature is particularly useful for performance critical applications where you need to work with the pointers or ref structs with async methods or iterators. Back to you, Sachin.
Thank you. So as you can see on my screen, I have a async method. Now prior to C Sharp 13, this would have thrown a compile time error straight away because ref local variables, ref structs, they were not allowed in a async or a iterator method. But now with C Sharp 13, you can see I'm able to use this value in my program and I'll be able to use it in the async method. However, there is one consideration that we have to take, await boundary. That's very important. Uh, the uh, local variables, it cannot be accessed across the await boundary. What that means is here we have a await statement in my program. If I try to use the same variable at after the await boundary and try to build it, let's see, it will throw a compile time error for me. That yeah, you are trying to use. If you can see my screen,
Yeah.
um, you are trying to use a ref local variable which cannot be preserved across await or yield boundary.
Yeah.
So uh, that's a consideration that we have. But yeah, I mean, in the same fashion, C Sharp 13 also allows unsafe contexts in iterator methods. However, all yield return and yield break statements must be in the safe context.
Okay.
Back to you, Bish.
Yeah, interesting. So now if I'm going to the next uh, features in the C Sharp 13, that basically the allow ref structs features, which enable the generic type parameters to be ref structs, as well as expanding their uses to allowing for the more efficient codings. Now, let's talk about the key points of this one. So the first thing is the generic constraint. You can now specify that a generic type parameters can be a ref struct by using the allow ref struct constraint in the where clause. Second important aspect here to ref safety rules. This basically the compiler enforce the ref safety rules on all the instances of the type parameters, ensuring that the ref structs types are basically used safely and efficiently. This features is particularly useful for the performance, again, the performance critical applications. They're playing with the memories and where you want to leverage the benefit of the ref struct types with the generic algorithm. Back to you.
Thanks. So over here in my class, I have defined a ref struct of my own type. It has an integer variable, and this ref struct type, prior to C Sharp 13, it would not be allowed to use it as a generic parameter. Um, so now, as you can see over here in my screen, this this class has a generic type, and this is an anti constraint that we are using over here, which says that allow ref struct. That means T can be of type ref struct in my program. So yeah, I mean, as Amish mentioned, even though it is allowed, the compiler will enforce that ref safety rules on all instances of that parameter are applied or enforced.
Yeah, thanks, Sachin. So now let's quickly move to the last question, but not the least one from our list. So in C Sharp 13, the ref strict types basically cannot be implemented interfaces or implemented in the interfaces, which basically significantly enhance their functionality where adhering to the safety rules. For this one, if we go for some of the key points, so the first one is the interface implementation. If you remember that previously ref struct type could not implement interfaces, but now with C Sharp 13, you can declare the ref struct types implementing or implements one or more than one interfaces also. So this is being changed now. The second thing is about the safety rules. So to maintain the ref safety, a ref struct type cannot be converted into the interface type. This basically restrictions prevent boxing conversion, which could violate the ref safety rules. So this was important. Now, if I would like to conclude it, the ref features particularly useful for the scenarios where you need again the performance benefit of the ref struct types, but also want to leverage the abstractions and flexibility which is being provided by the interfaces. So this was the whole idea about this new functionality or the feature introduction by the Microsoft. Back to you, Sachin, for the quick walkthrough in the code.
Sure. So over here in my file, I have a ref struct uh, of name my new ref struct, and I also have a interface I example which declares a method display. So here now I am able to implement the interface I example and uh, implement the method that were declared in the interface. One thing to note over here is that the ref struct types must implement all the methods declared in the interface, including those with the default implementation. So this was not allowed before C Sharp 13. It's a cool feature that they have introduced and allowed now. So yeah, I mean, obviously that comes with all the safety that you cannot convert it to a different convert it to an interface type and others. But yeah, this is another feature that comes with C Sharp 13 and could really help the developers going forward.
Yeah, thanks, Sachin, for that one. And now, what more can you explore? This is an important thing because the story doesn't end here, but there are some of the exciting new features coming up to the C Sharp bucket. Please keep your eyes on the preview features and the general availability announcement by the Microsoft. And I hope you found the session interesting, useful, providing the new insights into your C# programming requirements and some of the best practices around there. So I'm truly grateful for your valuable time today, and would basically greatly appreciate your positive feedback and the suggestion. It means a lot for us, for me, for Sachin, and the whole organizing team, that we always strive to improve. Now, I would like to open the floor for the question and discussion, if there would be anything.
Hello. Just to say, first of all, thank you, Ambesh and Sachin, for what was a very slick demo. Actually, that was, as I said, for somebody like myself who's not from a .NET background, you know, I'm always there kind of trying to read the syntax and understand what's happening, and you explained that brilliantly. So it was really nicely done. We've got some great questions though. We've some may be going back to some of the features that you were showing at the start. So forgive me if they have to kind of, you know, challenge your memory there. One of the questions that came in very early on actually was, when should I use UTF string literals instead of just regular strings? Is there a particular time when I would do that, or what are your thoughts?
So I would say if the question is very specific about the new escape characters there. So for the new escape characters, the best part is that, like, going forward, I would be opting up the new functionality which has been introduced, because the previous one, as I said, the biggest problem with the previous approach is that, yeah, you can use, definitely the previous also the code was working, but the moment you include the additional hexadecimal characters there, then you broke the code entirely, because then it got encountered with the error, and then your code is basically the error pawn. And to avoid this, all of the challenges, I think it's a really great initiative from the Microsoft that they come up with the new escape character things. And I know what kind of the pain when we used to work with the traditional methodologies or the traditional approach to avoid the runtime things, review the, you know, lot of reviews required and everything, and still we encountered sometimes those kind of the error scenarios. So the new functionality is very fruitful, very helpful, and I have no reason to say why we should use the existing or the traditional approach, because it provides a great flexibility, less error prone, and you have a complete control on the new escape characters there. So I would definitely go for that.
Yeah, brilliantly put again. And I think there was another question around that where they said, you know, how does this compare to regular strings in terms of performance? But I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head where performance only matters if the application runs. So if, you know, if you're saying that there's one way that you can just break your application, then it's a good idea to avoid that approach. So brilliantly put. Are there any, this is a nice question, are there any quality of life features that are still missing? Is there anything that you go, this would be great in perhaps C#14, you know, on your wish list? Is there anything you can think of?
I think I would definitely go with the idea forum. So I would request to the people to just go to the Microsoft ideation forum, log your ideas there, and yeah, spread across the community. If we see the values, definitely we get and go for the upvote for that. But how Microsoft work on that one? So definitely they have some of the product plans for that one. And apart from the product plans, they keep continually looking all of those ideation. And what you ask me, like what is missing? If I go to the ideation forums, then you will see there are the thousands of the ideas which is already in the queue. Microsoft is analyzing all of those ideas. So yes, the ideas come from the developers, you know, who develop and who were living days and night with the .NET framework or with the C# programmings. So I won't say there is a right idea or the wrong idea. The only thing, how it is getting correlated with the general practice of the development or the programming. If people really think about that, okay, this idea is really valid and it need to be prioritized, they upvote it, and based on their upvotes, it's really Microsoft is picking up. They just come up with a timeline and they just plan entirely accordingly with that one. So I say there are a lot of ideas was already there. Just have a look for that one. And if something which is coming in your specific mind, which is not being there, please drop an idea there and ask the community to upvote that one. If we really see the value, we will upload it for sure. There are a lot of things missing. Nothing is perfect to cut in short, but I don't really want to say that, okay, yeah, it's with every programming language. So none of the programming language has been achieved till you say it's a gold mark and now everything is there. There is no issues. Improvement is a part of any programming languages related with performance, security, scalability, agility, and everything there. So it's in the great context. And there is also, I think, very soon, if probably it's already there. If not, then there is already a roadmap plan for the next version also there, because you still know that C# 13 you can only use with some of the specific frameworks. Plus, example, we already mentioned in the beginning, you need a preview. Basically, Visual Studio 2022 preview version, the best fit for that one, and then you can run with that one. 2000 in the next release, like C# 14, I'm pretty much assuming that probably definitely not in this year, and the roadmap is probably around the end of the next year would be there. But Microsoft have to confirm. I'm pretty sure probably if I will ask the Microsoft guy Sachin here, he probably won't have an answer because he don't belong to the same team. But yeah, it's there. It will be on the website about the roadmap plans. Right now, there is no roadmap for that one. So I would be at least assuming that it would be coming by the end of the next year. So we have to wait for that one, for the new things.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually, you know, when you were giving the sort of plotted history of C# at the start, I had a quick look at kind of the release schedule and sort of how often it was updated, because I think that languages like C#, where they're like the bedrock of so many applications, they, because of, you know, the fact they've been around and for quite a while, they sometimes get this reputation as being stale and something that doesn't update that regularly. Whereas when I look at those release notes, every single year there is a major release with new features that, as you said, have gone through a long process to get to that point. So I think it was it's really kind of I'm really optimistic about it as a for the future, you know, in that respect.
Yeah, but on the counterpart, Daniel, just look the pain of the developers. Like every new year, you have now the new features. So it's not only like you have to adopt all of those things. If required, you have to just integrate with your existing code base. And then the pain doesn't stop here, because when you go for the interviews and anything, then people will ask, okay, what are the new features? So previously you learn the new feature once and then you are quiet for the 5 years. But now every 1 year, the moment you finish up with all of the practicals, demo, or the implementation, or the real world or the real life exposure on that one, by the time Microsoft already ready with the next banner, look, this is now the C# 14, now the C# 15, every year. So I really don't know what Microsoft is eating and what drinking, that they are having a lot of energies and the whole team is really enthusiastic to provide more and more values to be competitive in the market, because we know how the market is going on from they are moving towards more the low code and serverless and those all the things. So they have to make their presence. Still, they are one of the, one of the charming language, and I have a finger crossed that C# is going to be rocking like in near futures or in next couple of years in the same way what it has to make a kind of the monopoly across the developers.
Yeah, for sure. I think I just wanted to clarify one very minor feature actually that you mentioned, because it was really interesting and I'm just trying to get my head around it, you know, coming from a different background really. So the locking feature you mentioned, and I think again you explained it really well, of saying, you know, this is only really going to be useful if you're working with like a multi-threaded application, and this is not something you need to concern yourself with too much if you're not. Just to clarify that, am I right in saying that the locking object then makes sure that you can only one thread can use a resource at a time, and that it's about sort of not having race conditions and issues with multiple threads trying to use the resource? Am I right in saying that's what the locking feature is about?
Partially, yes, that's true. But this is basically like how we design the multi-threaded application from the architectural perspective. So we always need to ensure that there would be no race condition, there would be no deadlock condition. That is more from the architectural perspective. What Microsoft add the value here, they introduce this functionality, and by introducing this functionality, we have like just an example. You just put everything in the using forward brackets or the using scope. The flow goes in, they create everything, and the moment flow go out, they clean up everything from the memory. So this is a great value, because sometimes there would be a condition like if it is running with some of the enterprise applications, and then you have some of the deadlocks later on, or those memories which has been occupied but cannot be released, which definitely impact on the whole performance. Sometimes you have to restart this from the beginning, like start and start it again to flush the memories out. But now if we are just going with this specific patterns, then we definitely overcome a lot of those potential issues which somebody has to manually do, and which is at some point of time it's not practical also. Because
Sure.
if you have some of the web APIs or the applications are running on, I won't assume, like if it is example for the airline industries or some kind of the financial industries, that okay, just restart this for a couple of seconds and then then everything off. So nobody would take on that one.
I understand, and I think again, very well explained. And I think we've got lots of questions in the Q&A, but as you can see, we've just hit 11 o'clock, so we do have to I'm sorry to be so abrupt with this and say thank you again to Ambesh and Sachin for your time and fantastic presentation. Just to say we will, with your permission, of course, share some details that those that have got questions might be able to reach out to you, places like LinkedIn, if we've got any more follow-ups. But just to say thank you again before we bring Ryan up on stage, and thanks again for your time.
Thank you so much, Daniel, and thanks everyone in the call. I would say stay with us, and there are a lot of new things are coming, and I'm on the call to learn all of those new functionality from the other speakers for sure. So stay with us.
To hear it.
Yeah,
love to hear it. Well, thank you again, and we're going to say goodbye now to Ambesh and Sachin, and we're going to, without further ado, bring up on stage right away. We've got Ryan Nino Dizon. Now, Ryan, have I said your name correctly? Please correct me if I haven't.
Ryan is correct. Nino is Nino.
Nino. Okay, we're okay with that.
Nino.
Excellent. So thank you, first of all, for your patience, and apologies, we're about a minute behind there, Ryan. We will get straight to your presentation briefly. So just to introduce Ryan for this session. So Ryan is a software architect and a Microsoft MVP. And in this session, Ryan is going to cover .NET microservices in Azure Container Apps. So again, lots for us to learn. And I'm going to disappear any second now from the stage. Over to you, Ryan.
Okay. So hi everyone. My session is all about .NET microservices with Azure Container Apps, and I like to say sorry about my voice. I am having a cold today, but yeah, I am very particular with Azure Container Apps. That's why I am presenting this today. And this is the this is the reason why I am really very particular with Azure Container Apps. And it's a serverless. And if we ask what is serverless for the sake of others, so it means that you don't need to think about the underlying infrastructure. You just need to focus on your task, or focus more on core business logic that you need to do. It also serverless computing also supports the automatic scaling and scaling up and scaling down your services. So it will scale based on the demands or workload that needs to be handled. And you can find all these informations from the official documentation, but I would like to highlight this last card here, which is more efficient use of resources. So I will this last card will be supported by my next slide, which is the comparison between the serverless computing and the traditional computing. In this example, or in this comparison that I am showing you now, is on my left side. I am using, in this example, I'm using Azure Function App, and on the other side, I am using the app service, the normal app service, and both this backend service API returns the same result, but you will be charged for a different way. I mean, in serverless computing, you will be charged for how long, sorry, for how long the service API has been executed. And in this example of mine, you will only be charged for a 100 milliseconds. And on the other hand, on the traditional computing, which is using app service, you will be charged for this backend service call for for example, if this is running for 72 hours, you will still be charged even if this API is not being called or it's not being executed. So when it comes to cost, you will immediately see that using serverless computing has its own advantages. But of course, this will depend on the requirements of your of your project. I'm sorry about my voice. Quick introduction about me again. I am Ryan, and I am a Filipino. I came from the Philippines. I am currently living here in Germany, and I am currently a Microsoft MVP in the category of Azure Cloud Native. And if you want to know more about my professional background, you can just connect with me on LinkedIn. And I also have this YouTube channel where you can, you can subscribe there, and so that you will see my current and future contents. And yeah, and some other social media here. You can just follow me there. Okay, so what what is Azure Container App? So most of the developers are very well. Some of the developers doesn't really like YAML files or complex configurations when dealing with container deployment. So Azure Container App still uses Kubernetes. So it's like on top of Kubernetes, there's this Azure Container Apps, which you can just use right away, or you can just use in a simplest way without having to think about under configurations that needs to be done. And but of course, since this is just an abstraction or interface of Kubernetes, there are lots of limitations compared to using K8s. Like for example, if you are if you are working with different Kubernetes APIs, that is not possible when you work with container apps or Azure Container Apps. In a more complex scenario, there's a lot of limitations. ACA Plus has this consumption and dedicated, and in this in if you want to have the serverless capabilities, you should use this consumption plan where you will be charged for how long the services or apps is being used or being being executed. If it's not being used, you will not be charged for anything. And for more advanced features, you can just choose this dedicated plan. You can check this different plans on the actual or the on the document official documentations of container apps. What can you build using Azure Container Apps? So as you can see here, you can work with microservices. You can, and this will be the auto scale criteria for this one. Will depends on the event that or how many scales that these different microservices are being triggered or being used. You can also work with different endpoints or simple web apps. You can also use Azure Container Apps. As you can see here, also container app supports these different revisions, and I will show you this later. I will just make this quick this slide presentation. And if you have this event-driven processing, you can also take advantages of using Azure containers as well as background processing, where you can the scaling will be determined based on the loads of the processes. And this is the high-level overview or high-level infrastructure of Azure Container Apps. It's a little bit messy, but I tried to break this into pieces. So basically, I'm sorry. Azure Container Apps lives in one container apps environment. So all of the container apps here are sharing the same virtual networks. You can also set observability that will check or monitor all your container app. So basically, container apps is your microservices that, like what I have said, can communicate directly because they are sharing the same virtual network. They are just inside the isolation boundary. And inside this container app, you will have your own. You will have a different revisions. It depends on your preference or requirements. Typically, you will only have one revisions, but if having multiple revisions will met your requirements, you can also have that. Let's say, for example, in revision one, let's say, for example, you have a new version of revision one. You can allocate the traffic to revision two for, let's say, for example, 20% of the traffic will be allocated to this revision two, and the rest of the percentage will be allocated to revision one. And once revision two is fully working without any problems, you can just use the revision two as well. Or yeah, you can have multiple revisions. It depends on uh, it depends on the requirements that you have to meet. And inside inside this revision, you can also have multiple replicas. So let's say, for example, in this service, there's this high demand or workload that needs to be handled, and this will also depend on how you set up the replicas of your container app. I will also show you that later on my demo. And finally, inside replica, there's this the container, which is your actual, let's say, for example, actual .NET project, or your web backend project, or your web front end project. You will That will be placed inside here, and you can also have multiple containers inside replica. And one of the common scenario to have multiple containers here is having this sidecar service or sidecar pattern. And one common service for, or tool for that one, is using this the Dapper, or distributed runtime application. So it's like you will have backend API here, and that backend API is dependent or is using the Dapper service, something like that. So yeah, so this is the command, or so how can we start deploying or working with Azure Container Apps. So first, if you want to work with Azure CLI, you can also do that. Just install that Azure Container container. Sorry, Azure CLI, and you have to log in, of course, and install this container app object. Once you have that, these are the different types of deploying your container apps or your project. And in this first line, or yeah, row, also this is the, if you have an existing image and you just want to get that, you can just run this container app and supply all the details or informations of that. You can also work, if you have if you have the local source code, you can also directly executing this command on your terminal, and this will automatically deploy to Azure portal. The last one is, if you have a GitHub repository, you can just trigger this. And the important property here is this hyphen hyphen repo, where you will point this to the URL, the URL of the repository, and it will automatically do the magic. This is the the other way of deploying your project. But I usually use this ACT commands. If you are familiar, this is the Azure Developer CLI. This is much more simpler, and I will show you how and why. And this is the common commands that you can use when working with this. And of course, you just need to install this. And yeah, you also have to log in to your subscription account. And after you log in, you just need to execute this app, and it will deploy everything. You don't need to to define any properties like what we have here, but still it's your preference how you want to deploy that. Okay, so in that slide, so I really intend to end that quick. So let me uh, do my first demo. I already have this simple project here, .NET project. I'm not sure if this is readable, so let me just okay, so ACA. We open this. Oh, I'm sorry, that this is the wrong project. ACA.NET. Okay, so this is just a simple .NET project. So as I have mentioned, I'm going to use the Azure Developer CLI command. Let's try to run this application first. .NET run. Yeah, this is just a simple weather forecast API. Just want to make sure everything's working. Okay, so that's it. Let's go back there and let's try to deploy this CLS. Actually, I already did this before, so I will just try to execute some of the commands, but I will not wait for this process to be finished. I will just show you directly the deployed ones. So, like what I have said, you can, if you are not logging, you just need to log in first, or log in like that. But in my case, I'm already logged in, so I just need to execute this and it, and I will be asked this one. I'm not sure if this is readable, but yeah, let me just no, that's too big. Okay. Okay, I will use this code in the current directory, and this command that detected that this project is a .NET. So if you have some project also, like if you have a front end Angular project or React, it will also be detected. and and I guess, well, and I think it will suggest if something is not right in your folder structure or project files. I will just use this and I will just 80 and my environment is ACA Ryan test. This name will be used for the name of resource group, and I will show you that later also. Okay, so that's it. So I just had to execute the AZD init, and that will generate files for me. And these files will be needed when I execute the the actual AZD deploy command. But yeah, so this the this the file or JSON file that will be updated once the necessary command is executed. And there's also this next steps here where you can check different guides if you want to work with your automation, if you want to work with your GitHub workflow, there's a steps here where you can just follow. Okay, so let's just try ACD app since everything is there. I will use my free subscription. US, yes. And yeah, so once this done, you will have, or I will have this kind of Azure services, and I will go to that directly. This is my task before, so I will that command will generate these services for me automatically. So all I need to do is to just wait. Okay, so that's the um, one way of creating Azure containers, and of course, you can also create your container apps directly here in Azure Portal, which I will just do it quickly. App here, create, use. I'm not sure why. Okay, so you can also test their image, and the most important here is this consumption, so it will be serverless. And if you have, we can also use this template and just consumption. Then let's just create this real quick. Then let me just check this out. Start deploying. Okay, so nothing special to this to this creation demo. But what I have here, the actual working um, uh, project, which has back end and front end, and I have here. So in this research group, I have two app service, the API service and the web front end. So it's a basic Blazor application. And of course, I have this container apps environment because Azure containers will not lead or will not communicate with each other if there's no container app environment. Let me just run this real quick. And I'm sure this is you are very familiar with this example. So this is just a weather weather forecast example project. So this information is coming from the backend API or API service, which is this one. And if we click this, this will not be, of course, accessible because this is well in a typical container apps environment. You only have one public endpoint, and in this example, my public endpoint is the front end, and you can set that publicly, or for example, if this API really needs to be publicly accessible, I just need to tick this or choose this accepting traffic from anywhere. And once I save this, which takes some time. Okay, so let's try to say it's accessible now. And if we go to this URL, so we can get the data that is being used in my weather page here. So yeah, so like what I have mentioned, so typically you will only have one endpoint that will be communicating to different container apps. Let's just save that again. Another example that I have here is I have mentioned the Dapper sidecar. Container apps fully supported that for your microservices, and I already have created that here. And but let me just check. Let me just show the code first for that code Dapper. We open this. Okay, just make this big. What I have here is two projects. So one is the checkout and one is the order processor. And I did not create this by myself. I just use uh, or just downloaded the existing Azure Developer CLI templates. If you are not familiar with that, you can just go just when you install this EZD and just uh, execute this command. Oops, template. Wrong spelling. Sorry. List. Sorry. So it will retrieve all the available template that you can use for it's like boilerplate that you can use to start testing out different let's say Azure services or .NET projects. You can check that, and you can also check this URL, this awesome AZD templates. You can also choose or pick different project templates here where you can start working with it. Okay, so like what I have said, I in this project there's only one functionality, which just to communicate this or enable this service to service invocation of Dapper. If you are familiar with that, you can just check that Dapper. That's very good tool or yeah, to work with microservices. So it's just looping this message that sends to this order processor, and yeah, it only receive or print all the messages coming from this uh, checkout project, and I will show you that in action now. This one. So let me open another tab so that I will show side by side. So this is the checkout. And let's open this log string. And this message is being sent to the order processing service. And this one, let's check. Yeah, so here's the message that is being passed from the checkout service. And to confirm that this is really working, let's try to, of course, let's try to stop this app service. Let's try to stop this. And yeah, so let's go back here and refresh. As you can see now, order processor is not receiving anything because I just stopped the checkout service. And once I start this again, and go back here, it started automatically to receive. It start or it resume the sending of messages. So that's how easy to implement this Dapper runtime. So if you are not familiar with Dapper, we can just go to that now. The APR. You can there's a sample project here where you can quickly start with a different implementation and yeah, just read all the details here, and you will appreciate this if you are not yet familiar with this Dapper. I am a little bit fan of this developer tool also. And yeah, so the deployment is done now, the one that I have executed. So like what I have said, this will all the necessary service will be created for you or for us automatically if you work with Azure Developer CLI compared to work or to use the normal Azure CLI. It depends on you. It depends on it depends on your preference. Um, what else do I need to share? I think yeah. So um, I guess this is I guess this is the end of my demo, and but I only still have one slide, I think. Yeah. So if you for the sake of others who don't know about this ACD or Azure Developer CLI, this is what will happen if you execute this command. It will do the magic for you. It will it will first sorry execute your .NET project, and that will generate the Azure Aspire manifest.json, and that will also which will be used for provisioning and for deploy. Once everything is published locally and containers are already that it will automatically execute this ACD deploy and and all your services or application will be inside Azure portal or Azure cloud server. Sorry about my voice. I really cannot speak well, but yeah, yeah, I hope this session of mine is at least helpful, and I'm opening the question and answer portion of this session now.
Excellent. First of all, just to say a big well done there, Ryan, for getting through, because I know how difficult it is to to be tasked with speaking when you've got a cough or a cold. So I think we were all feeling for you, but you did really well. Don't worry about it. Not a problem. Not a problem. Don't apologize. We've got some nice questions in the chat in a couple of different places actually. So I'll just take us back. So one person asked, or two people actually asked about the scaling, and let's see, they've got a couple of different questions. So one of them says, what's the easiest way to actually scale those microservices in Azure container apps? Is there a really easy way to do that?
Well, actually, that is automatic. I mean, you can do that automatically. Let me just share my screen again. Sorry.
Sure.
Actually, I forgot to present that.
No worries.
But yeah, actually, that's that scaling part is one of the good features of working with serverless. So it will automatically, your application will automatically scale down and up based on the demands of your applications. But you can also set different configuration here if you want. So there's this scale rules where you can set. There's also some rules that you can set here if you want custom. I did not try this custom yet, but yeah, you can also take advantage of this configuration.
That's great.
And yeah, so actually I forgot to show this because of my code, but yeah, let me just cancel
There's
this.
a lot to cover. There's a lot to cover. No problem.
And as I have mentioned about the replicas, you can have multiple replicas here. And let me just try that now. As of the moment, the revision mode is a single. But you can change that to multiple, like this. So let's say, for example, this revision one is, or if you have a new version of your application, you can just, let me just finish this. Yeah, but yeah, this will, yeah. Okay, so I will have this option now to create a new revision. So let me just try, and let me just get this. And that revision will also be listed here. Yeah. So it, yeah, okay. So as you can see here, it created another revision. So you have an option now to select or to add a percent to this um, revision. Let's say, for example, here. Oh, sorry, I accidentally clicked the inactive. Yeah, but as you can see here, there's an option that you can just switch between revisions based on your requirements, and you can also have multiple replicas inside that, like what I have created. And by default, you don't need to do something up here. I mean, like what I have mentioned, the scaling part should be automatic when you work with serverless.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as well, there's whenever you hear about something being automatic, there can be a downside to it, right? But there sounds like there's quite a lot of control there. The fact you can make your own rules. I know the person that was asking the question, is sort of saying, was it based on just traffic or load? But it sounds like you can make those rules whatever you like, and so you can base it.
Yeah, it depends on your rules. As I have shown earlier, you can have custom traffic HTTP request. Yeah, it depends on your criteria. Let me just go back there again. I know. sorry, the scaling part. So yeah, here, so you can set your scale rule depending on your queue scaling
Nice.
or HTTP scaling or custom. I did not, I never had a chance to try this yet, but I think this is really worth to check. And yeah,
That's great. That puts a lot of control in your hands, and I think that's
yeah,
especially when we're looking at these kinds of level
yeah,
of applications. That's super
yeah.
important. You know.
I also
Um,
want to mention these different menus here. Actually, I really forgot this. Well, you can take advantages of this authentication in Azure Container Apps. You can just there should be uh, a toggle button here where you can just enable this authentication process. You can also you can also take advantage of these secrets. So you can add, delete here. You can add your application secrets here. And I have already showed you about this ingress. This is the part where you can control the visibility of your services or container
mm,
apps. As I have mentioned, a typical scenario, you will have this one endpoint um, for your whole container apps environment. Deployment, you can also, if you want to work with your GitHub or Azure DevOps, you can also take advantage of these settings here. It's also like a toggle click bot or a toggle buttons that you can just save. You just need to supply the necessary information. Yeah,
and you could do this on
custom.
the command line as well, right? Because I know you mentioned at the
Yes,
start, didn't you? The command line options, they were nice. Yeah.
yeah. Actually, you can also, well, most of all of the settings here can be done via CLI, which
Nice.
sometimes is very. I'm very lazy to do that sometimes, but but in the
Yeah, I can
special scenario, I
imagine.
think you really need to use the command instead of just going here directly.
Yeah. I don't know which one I prefer though, because I find, you know, you do it on the command line, you make a typo, and I'd be feeling very kind of worried that I'm going to just break
Yeah,
everything. So I think for me, I'd go for the UI wherever I can. Ryan,
yeah.
just one very quick question, just to finish up, because somebody asked about the sort of comparison between Kubernetes and Azure as options, and you know, can you think of any key differences when it comes to using microservices in .NET between the two?
Well, as I have mentioned, if you have this complex requirements, especially if you are dealing with different Kubernetes APIs, or if you want to communicate with different controllers or control plane controllers, you cannot do that using or just working with Azure Container Apps, because it's like this is the K8s or Kubernetes, and this is the Azure Container Apps. So Container Apps is just abstracting all the functionalities of Kubernetes. And if you want to have a complex scenario, or if you have a complex scenario, I highly suggest you work with Kubernetes. Yeah,
Love it.
but
That's really
but
well explained.
but I think most of the let's say simple projects with Azure containers will work better. I mean, you don't need to use Kubernetes, especially if you're a developer who really don't know about this K8 stuff, which is sometimes very scary to deal with. Just work with container apps or Azure container apps. You just need to click. As I have shown you earlier, it's a matter of ACD app, ACD deploy, ACD init, or just click create and deploy your project. And that's it. Compared to
Yeah.
Kubernetes, which we will talk about different nodes, different control plane, and master APIs inside of those environments. But yeah, it's your preference by the end of the
Yeah, it's
day.
always the way, isn't it? It's always the way you can answer everything in development with, well, it depends, you know. But at the
Yeah,
same time, I think that it's good for people to hear those differences in terms of, you know, where you would use one as opposed to the other. I know if we had more time, Ryan, because we are out of time, unfortunately, but if I had more time, I was going to ask you about those templates, because I think that's where that's probably where I would go to just sort of start to see, you know, I like to see examples of things before I try and do it myself, even when I don't understand it. And so I think having seen your example and then having seen the templates, I can see there's ways that somebody like me who's never used it could jump in and at least familiarize myself. So so I really appreciate that. Just to say then, because we are out of time, Ryan, that thank you to those that were asking questions in the Q&A, and we've seen your socials on there, and we'll be sure to share those again, Ryan. And then anybody who's got any questions can do a follow-up. We also turn some of these talks into blog posts, so we will be kind of reiterating what it was you said in your discussion or in your session in that blog post in the next few days, and hopefully that'll answer some of the questions. So you can see on screen there, there's Ryan's socials. And thank you again, Ryan. Before I abruptly take you off stage, I just want to say a big thank you from us all here for being involved in the day.
Thank you also for being here, for having me here. Bye.
Thanks again, and get well soon then, Ryan. Get well soon. Take care. Okay, so we've got around 15 minutes until our next speaker. So as promised, I've got some tips and tricks for you, and I'm also going to just give you a couple of little, well, I say a freebie. It's a discount code to one of our fantastic partners events. So to do that, I will just share my screen with you all. Here we go. So, okay, so here we can see this is one of our partners, the fantastic Black in Tech Berlin, and I'm just making sure you can see my screen. Fantastic. So one of our partners, as you can see, is going to be holding an event in 2 weeks. So it's 2 weeks tomorrow. So from tomorrow, 14 days, and it's the 31st of October. How is it the end of October 2024 already? It's blown my mind, you know. But the purpose of this event is to celebrate and encourage and motivate and bring about and celebrate more diversity in tech. So it's a fantastic day of networking, workshops, and of course there'll be some refreshments, which everybody always likes as a bonus when you go along to these kinds of events. So excuse me, the event is going to be held in Berlin, and you can see that here just on the page, and we're going to be giving away a discount code in the chat briefly. So you will see that one pop up in a moment. Let's just see how things are doing on the chat. So again, thank you to Black in Tech Berlin for partnering with us for .NET Day. It's great to have some of these, you know, whether they be grassroots organizations or larger organizations like Black in Tech Berlin that we can work with, and we can work towards the same aims. So we'll be giving that away in the chat briefly. You'll see in the comments, and so feel free, you know, of course, to take a look at the website, and you can find that with your old friend Google. And that's just been posted now, I believe, for you all, so you can see that. So go along, please do. There's so many great events that take place across Europe, and we try and elevate these kinds of events and show them to you all and share them with our community. And this is a great one with a really great cause. So we'll share that one in the chat. Now, just to move along, because we've got around 13 minutes, so we don't have long until our next speaker. I'm just going to share my screen again, but I'm going to share a different window this time. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, let's see. Can we see that one? Yes, we can. All right. So for this, the next sort of 13 minutes, if you like, I'm going to be sharing with you some tips and tricks specifically for when you're working with JSON. Now, to give you the overview of what you're looking at, I've got a very simple project here. As you can see, I've just got my data folder, and in there I've produced some sample JSON with help of my trusty friend AI, who has produced this JSON object. And you can see in there I've just got some information about some individuals from across Europe, and for each of those individuals they're going to have name, age, email, an address object, and then hobbies as an array. And then there's also going to be an array of transactions. Now bear that in mind, because I'm going to work with that shortly. So this is just some dummy data that gives us some opportunity to play around with some of it in different instances. So in this transactions array, you can see we've got a date, which is a string. Now, the only reason I'm bringing that to your attention is because we're going to work with that in a moment. So as you can see, I've got 10 steps, and I'm going to try and walk you through the code as quick as I can, because while it might look quite like there's quite a lot there, you'll see that there's a fair bit of repetition where I'm just loading the sample JSON at the top of each of these files. And I am, as you can see, using Node.js. So in a moment, I'm going to use the terminal to see the results of each of these blocks of code. So first of all, I just want to show you how you can parse things safely. Now, if you imagine that you want to work with some JSON and you want to parse it, something like that, you may just run json.parse on your JSON object. Now, the issue here is, what about if it's not valid? So I'm going to show you two different ways, one that you can safely parse, but in a moment, I'll also show you a way that you can validate that before you work with it. So there's two different ways of making sure that you handle those errors straight away. So if I just bring my code back so you can see what it looks like, I pass the data inside of the try and catch block. Now, this is the purpose of this try and catch block. It's of course going to try and parse the JSON, and if it can, it's going to show me the error, and it's going to be cool. Now, if I just show you how this one, or what this one produces, you can see here, I've got a block of parsed data at the start, but then I've got this one line of code at the bottom that you probably can't see very clearly. So to show you that in a little bit more of a straightforward way, I'm just going to delete that first block. And now when I run that again, you can see I've got invalid JSON, and I know that it's this try catch block that's actually showing that. So the reason for that is that I've passed it some bad JSON as well, where I'm missing the closing curly bracket, and it tells me that in my error in the console. So nice and simple. It just means that to make sure that the JSON can actually be parsed and there's no issues, I can just run it inside of this try catch block. So moving on very quickly, we could do that another way. We could do that with something like this, where we create a very simple function. Now you can see I've already printed out the results and I get true and false. And the reason for that is it's a nice simple function where I put my try catch block inside of there. And it means that each time I want to validate that JSON, I can just use this function. And you can see if it's able to parse the JSON without any issues, then I'm going to get true. And if it's not able to parse it, then I'm going to get false. So I've passed it some very simple JSON in here, just as a string, and then that's able to parse that. Whereas this one here, that's not JSON, returns false. So really nice and simple one. And it means it's much more maintainable, because I can just use that across different files throughout my application. Okay, this third one. Now, it took me a while. I know when I first started learning to code, it took me a while to realize that I could pretty print when it comes to stringifying. So I'll just show you what I mean here. So after I've passed my data, what about if I wanted to stringify it again? I just want to see it as a string. Now, if my code were to look like this, and I'll talk you through this in a moment, I would get something like this. So I probably should have named these files something more easy to work with, but I get a big block of completely unreadable stringified JSON down below. Now, as you can see here, I've put in the comments, the third parameter here handles indentation. So the first parameter of stringify being the JSON, I'm passing it in. The second one we'll get to in a moment, which you can see here is a replacer function. And the third one is just your indentation. So if I change that back to 2 as it was, and I press up to run again, now I've got nicely formatted JSON that I can actually read and work with, but you can see there's no syntax highlighting, so I know it's a string. Nice and easy. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next one. Now, again, this could look quite complicated, but it's really not, because this here is the replacer. Now, again, if we just run it to see what we get as the result, then we'll walk our way through it. Now, to you, it will just look like stringified JSON. We've got no syntax highlighting, so it looks very, very similar to the previous step. And that's because we have done some of the similar things. We've used the stringify, and we've passed in our JSON, and we've indented it. Now, we've done that here with our JSON, and we've indented it. But that second parameter is where we've actually used the replacer function. So what we've done is we've excluded anything that's got the key of email. So if we look at our data, anything that's got the key of email is going to be removed, which you can see down below here, it's been removed. So it's just a really nice, simple way if we wanted to remove things like passwords or sensitive data and make sure that that's not going in with our JSON, then we can just do that by filtering it out. Now, of course, we can do it other ways using things like the filter method, and there's any number of ways we can do that. But this is a really nice, simple way that we can do it at the same time as stringifying, so that we don't have those keys or values in there. Now, if we move to the next one, it's a strange name, I know, if you've not seen this before, the reviver. But the reviver, you'll see, looks similar, but instead of passing in this function on stringify, we're doing it on JSON parse instead. So we do it at the same time. So here, what we do is we actually parse our data, which we do usually at the top of the document. But now what we can do is pass in this function. And as you can see, all it does here is it says if the key is date. So if we look at our data, we've got in our transactions array, we've got a date key. And with that, we've got a string. Now, we don't want that to be a string. We want to make sure that we turn that into a date. Now, the way we do that is we say if the key equals date, then return a new date object with the value of that key. So it's a really nice, simple one. And if it's not a date, then it just ignores it and it processes it as normal. Now, the way that we can check that this has happened is just by using quite a hacky kind of console log in specifically targeting, the first item in the array and then the first of the transactions, and just checking, is that a date? At which point it returns true. So we know it's doing its job. Now, you could, of course, print out the entire JSON object at that point and just double check, but that was a really simple way of me checking that the date was indeed a date. Okay, moving on. Now, I know we're going a million miles an hour with this. We're going very, very quickly. I have around about 1 minute per document, right, to show you what's happening. However, on Friday, you'll see that you'll be able to access a video form of this where I go through it in around about 12 minutes, something like that. So you get a little bit more time, but also there'll be a blog post to accompany it, and we'll have some shorts of the individual parts so you can see those. Okay, moving on. Deep clone. Deep clone sort of always seems like a strange one to me because, we parse it at the top of the document and then we seem to be parsing it again down below. But actually what we're doing is we are stringifying it first and then parsing that, which creates a new object. So it's a really nice way of cloning our JSON. We're going to look at what the result is. So here you can see printed is London and Milan. Now, the reason for that is that we've got our original data where we've just accessed one of the objects and we've said, what is the address city? It's Milan, unchanged. But we've also got a new object that we've just set to London, and then we just checked. So now you can see we've got these two different objects that are cloned, but we were able to adjust them and alter them without affecting the original. Really nice, simple one. Now, this next one, and we are coming towards the end, is the convert to query string. So if you wanted to take some data and just convert it to a query, now this is how we've done this. So here you can see it produces my string at the bottom. And the way it does that is it's just going to go and grab each of the keys from this object, which is just a very simple JSON object. And then from that, it's going to map over each of those as it's turned it into an array. And it's then going to encode that. So it's going to handle the formatting correctly, things like the %20 for the space in New York. So it's a really nice, simple way that we can take the key and the value from our object, and we can convert it to a string using this function, which we then use at the bottom of the document, and we print into the console. So that's how we get name equals John, age equals 30, and city, New York. Okay, I've got 2 minutes to show you 3, so I'm going to make this very, very quick. This next one is just one way that we can skip. There we go, that we can go through an array and we can pair up each of these keys and these values and put them into a result object that then we can use as JSON. So it's a nice, simple way of taking data from different places and converting it into a JSON object. So again, you can go and have a look at that one. This next one I'm going to skip over because it's quite self-explanatory. But in essence, what we've got here is a shallow merge of two JSON objects. So we've imported our sample data. But then what about if we wanted to replace some of the values with some new data? So a different name, and perhaps that person is 25 and they're from Berlin instead of Italy, for example. So here we can just go merge, And you can see that what it's done is it's updated some of the properties of the object, such as the name and the age. So it overwrites those original ones, but it's kept in the rest of the object. So it's a nice simple way of merging for when you need that. And the final one, which is probably my favorite, this is flat map. So if you've not used this before, it's a great way of, in one line, running all the way through your object. And in this case, I'm going to get all of their hobbies. So I'm going to, instead of drilling down here and getting this nested array and then using it somewhere else, I can just run flat map on the entire JSON object and say, return to me each of the user's hobbies. And there we go. And it puts it into a new array called all hobbies. So it collects them all from across the different objects within my JSON. Okay, now that was a million miles an hour. This is going to be available on GitHub as well. So you will be able to access this one. If you would like to use any of these for yourself, you can just grab the snippets, or you could work with it. Maybe you've got some tips and tricks you want to share with me, and so you could do that. Now, that was a very quick whistle-stop tour of JSON tips and tricks. Without further ado, we're going to get to our next speaker. So our third speaker for the day, we've got Pavel Lukashuk. Now, Pavel, when I bring you up on stage, my first question is, how did I pronounce your name? How close was I?
Really close. Pavel is almost perfect, but the surname is Łukaszuk.
Oh, Łukaszuk. Okay, I will try my
Yes.
best with that, Pavel, and I appreciate you not embarrassing me for trying my best but getting it wrong. Okay, so Pavel's a tech leader and a senior .NET developer, and for the next 45 minutes, Pavel's going to show us some tips, tricks, and more importantly, quirks in .NET. So over to you, Pavel.
Okay, just give me a second to update my setup. And we are going. So it's visible, right? So hello everyone, my name is Pavel. I have been a .NET developer for more than a decade, and I'm here today to talk about some weird things on the .NET environment. As you know, in .NET now you can do pretty much everything. You can create a mobile application, web application, backend, frontend, desktop, some kind of embedded things, and the number of changes in every .NET, or in every C# version is really high. In C# 12 we got 8 new changes. In C# 11 we got 15 new changes. But there are still a lot of things in old .NET version, mostly in .NET Framework. There are a lot of things that we do not understand 100%. But to be honest, in most cases, we do not need to understand it, or simply we do not want such big performance, or we do not care about such a weird thing to get some result. And in this presentation, I will get to show you a lot of such examples. But before I start, I will need to put some warning to you, because this idea of this talk comes from interview, technical interview. There are a lot of questions that are asked during technical interview, and interviewers got those things wrong. So if you heard something that I mentioned on this presentation, if you heard such question on the interview, probably interviewer do not know the right answer, probably only knows that most common. So if you want to explain this, please elaborate, because the perfectly right answer can be considered as by interviewer as wrong. But let's start. Let's talk about data types. In .NET we have a lot of data types, but let's focus on something we use on daily basis, so lists. Again, in .NET we have few type of lists, and for me, the most common use is list of T, so generic list of some kind of object. And on this list, we can do, this is strongly typed list, we can do some operation like search, like sort, and other manipulations. But the question for you is, what kind of list list is the generic list in .NET. From my higher education, I remember that we have many different type of lists, because we have single linked list, we have double linked list, we could have circular list, and probably some other types. And what may be surprising for you, a generic list of T is not any of that kind, because if you look at the bowels of the .NET, it turns out that list of T is just a fancy array. What is more interesting, non-generic version of this data type is called array list. In F#, exactly same data type is called resize array. So what you need to remember, that the performance of operation on list and on resizable array is quite different. Especially that default size of those collection is just a 4. So if you need to get some really high performance of your application, maybe those generic list is not the best choose for application. While we are talking about list, let's talk about iterating on your list. Let's start from example. We have some list of integers, and we want to go through all elements in this collection, in this list. So probably you will start with code like that. Simply use for each statement and use this to go through all elements. And some people say that you should not use for each, you should use for statement, because for statement is faster. This is something I heard for many years when I started to work on .NET. Okay, so maybe let's go with for. And when we paste our code into any IDE, doesn't matter, it will be Visual Studio or Rider, you will get the same advice, that the for loop should be converted into for each loop. Okay, so we have two approaches which allow us to get the same result. Let's check the performance of those approaches. And it turns out that for the small list with 10 elements, the for each is twice slower. For 10,000 element, it's again twice slower. For 100,000 elements, it's more than twice times slower. So it turns out that people was right, that for statement is much faster than for each. But why does it come from? It turns out that that below, just give me a second. If you look at the for statement, it is beneath the .NET, it's converted into while statement. So we have just while and checking if checking another element. Not a lot of things going on. This is quite performant. And if you look on the for each statement, then there's a lot of more things going on. We have our enumerator, we have our try-catch block, and then we have our while block, and then calling a new method from enumerator. And this is why this for each loop runs twice slower. But there is small catch here. In .NET version 7, there was some kind of optimization, and in .NET 7.0 you see that for each is just a little bit slower than a for loop. So if you're using .NET 6 or older, for loop is twice faster than for each. If you're using .NET 7 and newer, for each is almost exactly same performant as for. And while we are talking about those suggestions, because we saw those suggestions from Visual Studio, let's dig a bit deeper. This is another case. we'll still have our list of int, and we want to count the number of elements that are greater than 2000. And we can do this different way. I would start with something like that. So we'll just have our list and use where clause to filter this, and then use count extension method. This will return valid result. But again, if we paste our code to any IDE, then we got this advice that, well, we can replace it with just a single call to count function. So we have two approaches to gain exactly same result, exactly same valid result. We can use this where and then count, or we can just use count method. So what is the difference? Well, turns out that the second approach, using only count, is about 4 to 5 times slower. So we are saving just about 5 to 10 characters in source code, but our solution is 5 times slower. And this is constant difference in no matter the size of this array. So why this is such a big difference between those two approaches? Well, if you look at the implementation of those approaches, it turns out that count with predicate used in second approach and count without predicate, those are two exactly different methods. So here is count without predicate. We have null check. We have trying to perform a casting, and then if not, just perform iteration on every method element of collection. In where clause, we have again lot of null checks, and then trying to call enumerator. Count with predicate is a bit different because we have just a few null check, and then we have for each loop with checked context, and then running this predicate in if statement on every element. So there is some difference in this code, but it doesn't justify why the difference in performance is such big. If you look at IL code, it becomes really obvious, because when we are using count method with predicate, you see in this code we have something called call vert. So we are calling virtual method, while using where and then count, we are calling instance method. And this is why this is such a big difference, because when we are using second approach and calling this instance method, we call exact piece of code. So there are no question where this call exists. And in this first approach, this call vert instruction is used to call the virtual method, and then during runtime, our .NET compiler needs to understand where this method is and how to call it. So this is why this approach is 5 times slower. So if you are using any IDE or any extensions to improve your code, don't be so sure that they are always giving you the right advice. Another case for today is string concatenation. So this is a question I have answered many times on interviews. What is the most performant way to join multiple strings? And usually the best answer is using string builder. Small remark for today: it may be not the perfect solution because we have those memory span data types. So there are also other more performant approaches. But using string builder, usually it's the good approach. So let's check few examples. We have few short strings and we want to join them into one big string. In the first approach, we are doing simply concatenation using plus sign. In second, we are doing joining string with plus equal operator. And third approach is using string builder. Which solution will be the fastest? If you think about it, it seems that the string builder should be fastest. And it turns out that it is not. Because, let's look at this place, it turns out that the string builder is about 2 times slower than the simply joining string, and more than 1.5 times slower than this joining string using operator. Okay, maybe it's not the best example because we have just a small string. Let's use some longer string, like this one. We have this standard lorem ipsum text, and which approach will be the fastest this time? It turns out that again, simply joining string using plus sign is fastest, and now the string builder is almost 5 times slower. Okay, so maybe let's improve this a bit and make some changes in our string builder, because in string builder we can set up the default size of this string builder. Let's set up this at 100 elements and do check now. And it turns out that now the string builder is just a bit slower than naive approaches. Why this happens? Because string builder is using table for creating strings, and this table by default is only 32 characters long. So in this approach, we need to resize it twice, because this strings is more than 64 characters long. So we have to resize this array twice. So we need to allocate new memory, and this is why string builder in this situation is not the most performant way. What does it matter for you? String builder is not always the fastest approach to join string. But if you don't know how many strings you want to join or how long are those strings, then in the pessimistic situation, string builder will be fine. If you know more about your string, sometimes using simple join or simple plus sign or plus equal operator, this may be faster. But from my experience, this will be faster only for not more than 4 strings, and those strings should be rather short, maybe not more than 100 characters. And while we are talking about string, another thing it's checking for writing empty string. We have 2 approaches. We can use string empty, or we can use literal, so just 2 quotes. And there are a lot of people who are arguing about which approach is better. I have many people saying that this second approach is better because is it faster? Okay, it may have some sense because it is just a string literal, so maybe it is faster. But let's look a bit deeper in this code. If we look at the intermediate code, then we see that yes, those approaches are different. Using string empty means that we are using operation ld sfld, so which pushes value of the code onto our stack. And the second approach is using different operation. It's just a load string, so it loads exactly this empty string. So it seems that yes, the second approach is faster. But if we look at the assembly code, it turns out that the both approaches are exactly same. Please take a look at this position. because in both approaches we are just taking this literal, this empty string from intern of our application. So from the performance point of view, using string empty and empty string literal works exactly the same. The only difference is that the string empty cannot be used in every place, because this is static read-only field, so it cannot be used as a default parameter, for instance, or attribute value. In my opinion, you should everywhere it's possible use string empty, because it's easy to understand that yes, this is empty string, and if you cannot use it, then go to this empty string literal. And while we are on empty string, let's go to checking if something is null. Again, this may be not so straightforward. For many years, we used this approach. So we have value, and we have null, and we have two equal signs. And it worked fine for many years, but there is a question. What are those two equal signs? Those two equal signs are comparison operator. And what we can do with operator in C#? We can overload them. So we can create overloading for operators and simply return true. If you don't like your coworkers and people who will use your code, you can do something like that. So now using this equal operator will always return true. Or if you really don't like your coworkers, you can use something like that. So this equal operator will use randomly true or false. Or if you really, really don't like your coworkers, you can do something like that. So return different value once in a 15 calls. Once in a 15 calls, it is frequent enough to make a lot of problems on production, but not frequent enough to be easily spotted during your debugging. And what is even more important here, if you take a look at this code in your IDE, it turns out that no matter if you're using ReSharper, Rider, or Visual Studio Code, all those tools do not look at the operator overloading. So even if this operator is overloaded, then still Visual Studio say, hey, you don't need to check this, because you created that instance of this object, of this class, and this object won't be null. If you run this code, well, it turns out that it can be null, just because we overrided that operator. But our tools simply didn't help us now. If you want to make sure that something is null or not, you should use this keyword. Keyword is. The only issue is that this keyword was introduced in C#7. So in older, if you're using older version of C#, you need to make sure that nobody was overloading operators. And to be honest, there are also a lot of other ideas how to check if object is null, but let's do not dig deeper. I don't see any idea how to check to use them. There was no point of making your life harder. But while doing validating objects, checking if it's not null, I have found also one other interesting thing. Because let's think about it. We have some object instance of a class, and we want to check if this object has valid properties. So we can use, for instance, some method like isValid probably, or we can use some method in a different class, like for instance, my class validator validate. But if you want your code to look more like JavaScript, you can do something like that. Create your object and just put those object inside the if statement. You may ask how it works, because object is not a valid Boolean value. Well, it turns out that there is also a Boolean operator in C#. So you can overload those operators and do all the validation check here in those operators. I know that this approach has probably no advantages and it looks really like JavaScript, but if you work for many years in JavaScript and this seems fine to you, well, you can use this. There is such option in this language. One more thing for today, it's emergency handling. How to deal with situation that something may go wrong and you cannot prevent it, like for instance, HTTP request or communication with the database. In C#, like in many modern languages, we have this try, catch, final construction. So we have try block, in which we put code that may fail. We have catch block, and in this block we will have this error handling. And we have finally block, in which there is code that should be called no matter if there was failure or not. Seems easy, and this is how it works in C#, Java, JavaScript, probably many other languages. But if I gave you a task, let's create a code that can be put here in try, and it will fail so hard that code in catch and code in finally block won't be called. Our application will fail so hard that after try block, no other code will be run. And I want to do this in a way that won't destroy your hardware, won't destroy your operation system, and won't bring harm to any other application on your computer. So how to do this? We can use intrinsics, probably. We might think about using unsafe code, because messing with memory it's easy to make something broken. Or we can use reflection, because with reflection probably we also can break our code. Or we can use some array or data structure to create Stack Overflow or any other exception. But how to use it using the smallest amount of code possible? And that was surprising for me, because I approached this code in a production code in some application, but because it turns out that for destroying your whole application, you just need one method. Environment, fail fast, and then some string in the argument. And after calling this code, your whole application goes down. It's dead, and there are no logs in your logger, because application simply disappears. And this string you will find in an event log of your operating system. So it's simply the easiest idea at how to destroy your whole application. I found this code not once, twice in the production code. And I'm not sure if there was a valid reason of using that, but well, it was working. And what is most surprising, this is not a new method, because this is available since .NET Framework 2.0. Simply, we are not aware of something like that existing. I have 2 more minutes, so let's go to the one more interesting thing. Simple thing. Rounding of numbers. So we have our class math, and our class math have this method called round, and let's do some rounding of some small numbers. What result we may get? On my math lessons, I was taught that while rounding, if the last digit is is lower than 5, then we round down, so there will be 1. And if last digit is 5 or higher, then we should round up to the upper digit. Okay. What are other approaches? We may simply cut those numbers after the dot, the separator. So we may have also this result. Probably less expected, but still seems to be valid. But if we really call those methods, we will have really different result. And this is solution. Rounding 1.3 gives you 1. Okay, makes sense. Rounding 1.5 gave you 2. Okay, still makes sense. Rounding 1.7 gave 2. Makes sense. 2.3 is 2. Makes sense. And 2.5 is rounded to 2. Why 0.5 is rounded to 2? And 2.5 is also rounded to 2, not to 3. It turns out, this is something for you to, as a homework for you, this is something called Banker's rounding. And it works like that if the last digit is 5, it is rounded not to a bigger number, but it's rounded to the nearest even number. And those approach have some historical explanation. If you look at this, name, Banker's rounding, you will find why this was implemented like that. If you want to have this kind of rounding, I will call this school rounding. You may call it simply math round with additional parameter. And it looks like we are running out of time. So now I think I can finish. And what was one point of my talk? I want to show you a few ideas that even if some really well-known part of this C# and .NET, like list, like strings, like operators and rounding, there are still a lot of things that are maybe surprising. And if you have some time, please spend it on not on Netflix or watching some games. Please go down into bowels of your .NET application, of your code, and check how does it work beneath. And or if you see some advice from your extensions or IDE, also please check why this advice is given, why, if it's really valid, is it performant? Because sometimes you can really find some really interesting cases, or like in this mentioned, that those advices are really not valid or not performant. So this will be homework for you, and now we can go back to studio.
Excuse me, I made the schoolboy error of muting my microphone. Pavel, just to say, it's a great presentation, and it's always sort of interesting to see the quirks that exist, but quite frustrating, right? When you see things like the bankers rounding at the end. I was looking at that going, why would that round like that? I couldn't figure out the reason. And then when you said it's as simple as it looks for an even number, effectively, is that something though that you just have to get used to, and you just have to get your head around, or is there a way around it?
In most cases, you will not use this math round, but we will use a round built in decimal or in other method. When I look at my code, it turns out that we didn't use math round, but some other approaches. But in one piece of one application, I found something like that, and well, it turns out that it works different. You just need to put those different parameter. And when you look at the reason, why is this banker's rounding, why this came from? Okay, this is valid. That was a point. Maybe it shouldn't be a default behavior of this math round, but well, it's interesting. I was really surprised when I found it. Found that it has name, and it is a really old mechanism. And
Yeah,
if you want to ask someone some weird question interview, this is something that nobody will know. But again, it's probably doesn't matter in your work.
I mean, as soon as it popped up, I thought to myself, that is a code 100 question right there, especially asking somebody, something like that. What would 1.5 round do and what would 2.5 round do? Because it's completely counterintuitive. Pavel, my question is, how do you find these quirks? Are they things that you've always sort of been drawn towards, finding these sort of inconsistencies in languages? Or is it that you've encountered an issue and then when you've discovered the reason for the issue, you found that it kind of, the source was one of these quirks? How do you find them?
I started from this finding code in my application, because this bankers rounding and this failing your application, fail fast, I found this in my code, and I look, how does it work? Why we should this? Is it possible? And I start to dig deeper. Sometimes I would like to debunk those myths, like for instance that for is faster than for each. Then for many years it was faster, now it's not. And sometimes I just simply found some interesting things on blogs or from chat with my friend, like this string interpolation or this performance of count method in LinkedIn. This was really interesting because, hey, I used this for years because WeSharper is suggesting that, so why do not use it? And it turns out, whoa, my code is 5 times slower. Okay, it doesn't matter in big picture, but since I found it, I'm not using those suggestions by default. I always look, if I see some new suggestion, well, let's think a bit deeper. Let's do this performance check. Let's do the look in the intermediate code. Maybe there are some quirks below. I asked on the chat why this suggestion works in ReSharper and in Visual Student. So far I didn't get the answer, so maybe this is some bug, or simply there are some other reasons why this is suggested. Of course, code is shorter, but does it help us?
This is it. I think that's what's really interesting is that, I'll be honest, Pavel, I'm guilty personally of I will sometimes take an option or an approach that is simpler for me. Okay, as the developer, you kind of take that slightly selfish approach of maybe it's more readable, maybe you just have that new way of doing something. Like I mentioned, flat map in my video before, and this was something that sort of doesn't get used that much, but when you start using it, you think you want to use it everywhere. And the issue with that is that I probably am not factoring in things like the speed and whether or not I'm actually there's a trade-off. By me being selfish and liking my approach, it might be bad for the user. So we need people like you to kind of hold us accountable and say, no, this is actually a flawed way, and this is why. One of the questions that came in, sorry, carry on.
But in many cases, if you think of application performance, does it really matter that one of iteration and in your application will be slower? Usually there are other places like HTTP communication, database operations, so we can get a lot of performance in other places. This is something like, well, if you probably want to make your application faster, you wouldn't use list but some other data structure.
No, I think you're right, and I think some of it can come down to those things that we all sort of have, where we've got our preferred way of doing something, and if we see something that just doesn't marry up with that, we almost want to correct that person and say, no, do it my way. But I think you're right. We can then sometimes focus on quite minor improvements rather than actually larger scale, more major changes that we'd need to make in our software. Somebody asked a really good question, actually. Somebody said, are there any quirks or unexpected behaviors when you're working with .NET that could actually undermine the security if the developer isn't aware of it? Are there any things that would really put your security at risk unless you're made aware of these issues or quirks?
So far, I haven't found something like that, but usually I'm not digging such deep below this intermediate language. I'm not just a few times dig into assembly language. Maybe there are, but still, .NET is such old, and there are a lot of smart people that are looking at this. So I believe that it should be good enough for most cases.
That's good. That's really good to hear, because I think it's what we were saying to one of the speakers earlier, that when we're talking about things like C#, they'll get sometimes a bad reputation purely because they've actually been around for longer than some of the fancy, quote unquote cool languages that have appeared in the last, say, 5 years. But actually, it's as somebody who is from the outside of .NET, I can see that it's extremely robust because of the community actually updating things more slowly sometimes, but for good reason. And I think that security is obviously one of the main things that often we overlook. How about compatibility then? Are there any quirks in .NET that might cause compatibility issues if you were upgrading from an older version? Is there anything that would come up there?
Well, in .NET we have a big change, because for many years we have something called .NET Framework, and now we have something called .NET Core, and those change happened many years ago, probably, I don't remember. But if you want to go from .NET Framework to .NET Core, there are a lot of incompatibility, and for sure, even if part of your code will work, then your application for sure will not work at all. Because you need to change everything, even the structure of your project will change. But if you have using fairly modern version, like for now, current version of .NET, I believe is 8 or 9. 8 for sure is a stable version. If you use a version for 5 or 6, so 4 or 5 years old, then updating it's not a big deal. It's mostly depend if your libraries you're referencing, if they're up to date, if there are no breaking changes, if they are still compatible. Recently, I had to update few applications from .NET 6 to .NET 8, and everything works fine. We just need to do some checks, and then check about those libraries, because there are few libraries that we need to change to a bit different. Usually someone made a fork of library that is compatible, and then it runs fine. But again, your pure source code should work fine.
That's good to hear. So from your perspective, as somebody who's seen these quirks, but maybe you've also encountered things that are not quite there or are missing that you would like to bring in. They might not be quirks, they might be features, but is there anything that, excuse me, that in .NET that you go, this needs improvement, or this is a quirk that we need to fix or we need to change? Is there anything that, or do you think we just have to accept it? That's the way it is.
Well, for me, it would be nice if in .NET we have something like they have in Java, or in method signature, have those list of possible exception. Because then you look at the method signature and you see what making go wrong, and it looks also a bit more functional way. Then you don't need to look in the deep on the method, you just need to see signature, what you put in, what you get out, and to what may go wrong. This is something that may be missing. But honestly, I think we have a lot of things that I would remove from .NET, because for me it looks quite weird. But again, I'm old, so for people who started working with .NET a few years ago, this may be really straightforward, and now you may write C# code that is really similar to writing backend code using JavaScript for Node.js. And for me, okay, so for Node.js developer or for people who write microservices or really small backends, okay, this may be fine. But if you're making your big ass CRM, the application to manage all the world, you don't need those improvements. Sometimes there are also things I need to simply get used of, like for instance, this pattern matching. Okay, this is powerful, this looks great, but when I look at this code used pattern matching, I don't understand it. So I write this using switch patterns, and then apply code suggestions and ask people to check if this is fine, because at the first glance for me, I don't understand it, but simply I need time to use it.
I think that's actually really good for other people to hear, you know, because with your experience, you know, I'm sure that you've had it before where, you know, juniors and people that are new to the technology will assume that you know everything and that you do not make mistakes and all these things that are just not accurate. And actually, it's really good for people to hear that, you know, you can pick up the updates in some areas or the quirks in some areas, and you don't need to master every element. So I think that's important for people to hear, because we do have people in the chat who are not working with .NET, but they might be interested in it. So I think that's really important for them to hear as well. My final question for you, Pavel, before we move forward is, it's a bit of story time, I suppose. Can you think of an example where there was a quirk or I don't want to call it like an oddity, but a strange aspect of .NET that really caught you off guard and was one that took a while to solve? And how did you solve it?
Well, this was exactly quirk I mentioned. It was, well, this is not a quirk. This is this expected behavior. This is those fail fast, because this piece of code was hid into library, into some external module, and you imagine you're debugging your application and it's working, it's not working, and you have no logs, no breakpoint, no nothing. And you go to the bowels of your application, and it turns out that this is this specific method that breaks everything, and this is how it's supposed to do. So really, and I was also asking my seniors in my team. I was a junior then. It was like, well, it's not possible. There's probably some memory corruption or something, and it was no. It was expected behavior, and someone put it in that place. And of course, I'm not sure if it's the valid result, because we have other mechanisms to gently destroy your application. But if you want, you can simply blow everything to the ground. And if you see something like that, you're like, you have your application, you don't have it. What happened? What is everything? And no memory traces, no nothing. Just this one line of code in the event log. But this is event log of your operating system. So this is not something you're looking on a daily basis. I need when I found this line, it was like, whoa, this is something I need to remember about and write down, because this is really interesting.
Definitely. And I think those sorts of things, you know, they're the most irritating thing when you're trying to solve them, because I mean, you know, it could be hard to switch off. It's like sometimes it's all you think about. And then the moment you solve it, we all have that amazing feeling. But yeah, it's very important then to share that on, right, with other developers, because they're probably struggling as well. So as I said earlier on, I think we need people like you. We need not just seniors, but people that are then you know, willing to dig deep and really try and uncover why something is the way it is, and then the issues that can cause if you're not aware of it. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people watching your presentation that learned a lot there, Pavel. That was great.
Thank you.
Excellent. So again, just to say a massive thank you to Pavel Lukashuk, and apologies for my pronunciation. I'm trying my best there. Before we move on to our final speaker, I mean, these sessions so far have just been brilliant. And I have to say, as somebody, as I've said several times, who doesn't work with .NET, I love to learn. I was a teacher for several years. And I think if you're a teacher, you also love to teach, but you love to learn. So being here and actually looking at this from different angles with each of these speakers and covering something different has been great. I'm learning a lot. So before we bring our final speaker up, we've got a couple of things to just cover and go through and look at. So I'm going to share my screen shortly, but before I do that, what we're going to do, bear with me 1 second. I'm just going to bring up a few little documents in the back. And what we're going to do in a second is we're going to look at our Code 100 challenge for this week. So before we show you the video explaining what the challenge is and laying down the gauntlet for you, which my fantastic producer in the background, Vincent, is preparing right now, we've got a couple of bits to just tell you about. So I'll kind of fill you in on the details of what Code 100 is. Because for some of you, you're saying, what is Code 100? And I can't believe you've not heard of it. That's my first thing I'll say. I can't believe you've not heard of it, because it's Europe's ultimate coding competition. But I'll just tell you what it is and what I'm going to tell you, or what I'm going to show you in a moment. So If you're not familiar with Code 100, then I'll share my screen with you just to make this a little bit easier so you can see. So Code 100 is just here on this tab. And you can go to code100.dev to view this site. As you can see, Code 100 is a live coding event. So the purpose of it is to not just see who's the best developer, but it's who can actually solve a series of challenges of different kinds in front of a live audience, sometimes on their own and sometimes in a pair. Now, we run the Code 100 grand finale, or the finals, as part or as one of the events, the mini events that's in our World Congress. So it's our big flagship conference in July each year. And you can, of course, if you get a ticket to the World Congress, you can come along and watch Code 100 as well. It's one of the highlights of what is already an action-packed 3 days of events. And what we do here is we bring together at the grand final, we bring together the winners from all of the different heats or events or stages along the way. And this is what we're doing this year. So as part of these live days, we're laying down the gauntlet, we're setting you the challenge, and then you have a week to submit your answers. And next Monday, so just under a week, we'll be unveiling the 2 winners from this week's challenge who will be booking their spot in the grand finals in Berlin in July next year. Now, what you will see is in a moment, we're going to show you the video which will set the challenge for you. And then I'll just explain how you can submit your answers, and we'll show you some QR codes so you can get involved. So as you can see here, we've got our winners and runners up from previous years. And you can on here go and watch the after movie to kind of see how the Code 100 event actually works in reality live on stage. So okay, on that note, I'll just stop sharing my screen briefly. And Vincent, my producer, is in the background. So here is your challenge for this week.
Hello and welcome to another Code 100 Live Day Challenge, your chance to secure your spot at the Code 100 finals at the WeAreDevelopers World Congress in July in Berlin. This time it's all about license plates, and you can scan this QR code to learn what it's about, and you can scan this QR code to submit your answer. You can also click the links, so let's take a look at the README right now. This challenge is all about license plates, specifically German license plates and how to validate them. This is what they look like. They have the flag of Europe and Germany, SD, Deutschland. Then they got the city and region, registration and safety seals. In this challenge, only the lower one will be interesting because that indicates the state that this license plate is from. Then you have random letters and numbers. What you get is 2 data sets. One is a CSV file with all the German license plate city areas, their names and states, and an array of 2000 licenses in JSON format. So in this case, the CSV has the license name, follow-up licenses, city area and state. And this would be the A here would be that. Augsburg would not be used. And Bayern, Bavaria would be this, which actually is that seal here because of that flag. But that's something that you don't need to know. And then we have lots and lots of license plates that might or might not be valid. So your task this time is actually go through all these license plates and make sure that they're actually valid and tell us more about the different license plates that you find. Specifically, what I want to know is the amount of invalid licenses, licenses that are not valid, Bavarian licenses, licenses that are from the state of Bavaria, and electric licenses, which is the amount of electric vehicles. This is actually indicated by an E at the end of the license. So if you want to know about Bavarian licenses, you have to look for Bayern as the state in that data set here. So you have Bayern here, and this is basically, that already would be a license plate from Bavaria. The rules when or if a license plate is legal are those. The licenses are in the format XXX, YY, NNNE. XXX is the city area that has to be part of the CSV dataset, which also contains the state. So as you can see up here, you have like, for example, you have A for Augsburg, and Bavaria is basically also the state here. YY are 1 or 2 letters of the alphabet, and they cannot be umlauts. So basically, this one here, ZK works, Z umlaut would not work, like an AÖÜ, these kind of things. And then you have NNNN, which is up to 4 digits. That can be 1 digit or up to 4. and then electric car licenses end with an E, so they have an E at the end of it here. For example, FML AB344 is invalid as FML is not in the dataset. FFX I1239 is valid. SWXU33 is valid and from Bavaria, because if you look into the dataset and you look for SV, it's Schweinfurt, Bavaria. BAR 2024 is invalid as the second part contains an umlaut. And BAR 441E is an electric vehicle. What I want back is a JavaScript object or a JSON object with the amount of invalid licenses, the Bavarian licenses, and the electric licenses. Good luck.
Okay, so brilliantly explained there by Chris. Now, before we jump in, we've got just a couple of minutes before we move on to our next speaker. I just want to reiterate a couple of very quick announcements. So I will share my screen just once more. So as you heard there, that was the Code 100 challenge. And what you'll be seeing shortly is a quick link which you can follow, which will give you all of the information that you might need. So you'll also have your Google form where you can submit your responses, as well as, I believe that's just been posted, as well as information if you want to go and watch the explanation video again, or if you want to see that website that Chris was showing you, where we put all of our challenges, and there's some other information there if you just want to practice previous challenges. So remember, the point of you taking part in this Code 100 challenge is, of course, you get to book your spot at Code 100 at the grand final next year in July at the World Congress 2025. Now, as you can see on the website, if you're not one of those lucky Code 100 winners who gets a free ticket, remember, Code 100 participants get a free ticket to the World Congress. So that's a 3-day pass. But if you're not one of those individuals, then you've got just 2 days left to get yourself an early bird ticket before those prices increase. So you're getting an amazing deal here, being one of the first people to get tickets at this stage. Now, we've been absolutely bowled over by how many people have been taking up this offer of the early bird offer, considering that, you know, the World Congress 2024 only finished a couple of months ago, and we still got around 9 months until the next event. So if you want to get prepared and get your ticket, then you can do that right now. Get yourself an early bird ticket before the weekend. And we're going to see in the chat briefly, we're going to see your discount code for doing that. So that's available to just those people that are watching this live event, and you're going to get yourself 15% off of tickets there. So, and my producers just posted that. So thank you again to Vince. Now, the last thing before we jump into our final session is just to reiterate what we were saying around our partners for this event. So a massive thanks to the Bytes 24 Summit. So that is the Black in Tech Berlin event, which is the Black in Tech Europe Summit. So Bytes, really good name, I have to say. Now that takes place on October the 31st. So 2 weeks tomorrow. And you can get yourself a 10% discount code from the chat as well. So lots to give away. Okay, without further ado, we've got our final speaker for the day. I'll just stop sharing my screen there before I bring Steve up on stage. So our final speaker for today, to finish up the day, we've got Steve Billigan, who is a senior engineer for Uno platform. Steve, I've been asking everybody this. How well have I done on pronouncing your name there?
Oh, it was good. It was close. Belogan is pretty much right there.
Belogan. Okay, okay. I'm close. I appreciate it. And again, I'm trying my best. Steve, you're going to take us home for today. And the subject of your session today is .NET apps everywhere. Everywhere? Everywhere. We'll see. Okay, over to you, Steve. Enjoy. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you. Yes. Hello, everyone. So, yeah, my name is Steve. I am an engineer, and I am one of the core maintainers of the Uno platform open source project on GitHub. So what we're going to talk about today is basically how you can use Uno platform and what it is and how it works and how you can use it to get any apps, any of your .NET apps up and running on any platform. And when I say any platform, I really mean any platform. So What we're going to do is we'll do a quick overview on what Uno is, how it works, and we're going to jump into some code. We'll build some apps, and we'll look at a bunch of different case studies and sample apps that we've had that you can check out. So number one is what is Uno Platform, right? So Uno Platform at its core is a free and open source framework for building cross-platform applications, right? So basically, you can build apps using Uno Platform and target anywhere the .NET runs. And nowadays, .NET runs everywhere, right? It's all from a single code base and all from a single project file, which we'll get into when we jump in and we look at the bits of an Uno project. So the core platform, Uno Platform, has a single API layer for the UI that works across all platforms and plugs into the native rendering engines for each of those operating systems, for each of those platforms that you're targeting, right? So whether that's UIKit for iOS, Android, the Android Views system, HTML, or even Skia-based rendering from multiple different platforms, you can also swap to having Skia as your renderer for your actual UI, right? So that's the, we'll get into a little bit more of what that single API layer is for the UI in a second. But that's it for the core technology, right? So that's the main core nugget of Uno is there. And on top of that, there's an ecosystem of these first-party libraries that the Uno Platform team maintains and keeps up to date and is also free and open source on our GitHub. And so these first-party libraries provide things like themes and styles for different design languages. So you come out of the box with Fluent, like you'll see, sort of looks like a Windows-y type of feel for your UI. But you can restyle that completely or partially using things like Material Design and other design systems like that. Additionally, we have, out of the box, we'll see that we are basically inheriting the WinUI APIs for developing UI, right? So on top of that, we have other libraries that provide things like more complex controls, so like a tab bar or like navigation bars or helper behaviors and stuff like that all come within a toolkit library that we maintain. And then we have extensions, which is another huge gambit of functionality that you can use within your application, right? So it comes with different navigation frameworks that you can use, different presentation frameworks for things like MVVM or MVUX, which we'll get into in a little bit, dependency injections, all those types of things. And we'll run through this as we build our first Uno app. And so there's also great tooling for integration with other developers and designer tools. So things like Figma or Visual Studio Code and Rider, right? So we have plugins for VS Code, for Rider, for Figma. So if you're on the design side of things, you can easily prototype what an Uno app will look like within Figma. If we have time, I will try and demo some of the Figma stuff because it's really cool. But let's just get a peek at what an Uno app looks like, basically, at its core, right? So I'm actually, this is the last, one of the last slides, then we'll jump to some code, but I'm actually running out of room on this slide as we add more platforms because .NET really does run everywhere. And so here's just a quick look of what I mean when I say you can write once and build everywhere, right? So this is a simple piece of code here, and you can have it work and look the same across all platforms, right? Now, if you notice that the UI XAML code that we have here, it may look familiar to you if you have ever done, if you're coming from the Windows world of development, right? So this is straight up WinUI XAML. So that's being built and running across all platforms. And so WinUI, if you're not aware of is basically the latest and the recommended way for building Windows applications from Microsoft, right? So this is their UI. This is their API for building your user interface within a Windows application. So what Uno is doing is it's taking those APIs and it's stretching it across all these other platforms that it wasn't originally meant to target, right? And so that's what I was talking about, where we take that UI layer from the definition of that UI layer APIs, and that's where we plug it into like the iOS UI kit or Android's view system or Skia-based rendering, as well as something that you can do as well. And it's the same code, it's the same behaviors, it's the same everything. So we've had a really good relationship with Microsoft where now WinUI is open source, right? So you can go and you can take a look at the implementation for all these APIs. And even before that, we've had the ability to peek into the implementation of these APIs and actually bring over line for line the implementation of these controls, of these behaviors, of these functionalities from within WinUI, and get them to be running within Uno with the same exact code, same exact tests, same exact logic, same exact behaviors, same exact everything, right? So it's actually the real code coming from Microsoft, but now running in this new cross-platform way on all these different platforms. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to jump to Visual Studio, and we're going to build some apps, right? So if you want, I'll put this QR code up back in a second, but this is where you can have a look at our little wizard. So we'll show 2 versions of this wizard. So yes, that worked. Okay. So we can go ahead and I'll just jump into Visual Studio, and we have the Visual Studio extension like I was talking about. So it comes with all these templates available. So if you're doing a library, if you're doing a test library for UI testing or whatever, all that. Anyway, I'm just going to build an Uno platform app, and we'll get it created. And the first thing that we see is this Uno platform like app wizard builder, if you will, that pops up within Visual Studio. So this is actually really cool. This is actually a Uno application running within this, the environment of Visual Studio that was actually fired off and will open and wait for the response back to whatever we configure the app to, and then it'll open Visual Studio with all the settings and bells and whistles that we've included here. So this is a little Uno app running for Uno itself. Right, and so we have a bunch of presets. So I'm not going to go. We're going to keep most of everything just on the recommended, which basically just includes all the bells and whistles, right? But we'll run through a little bit of what is available through the wizard. So of course, I'm going to target Net 8, but Net 9 is very close to coming out too, and we also have support for preview at this moment in time. When we look at platforms, so I'm going to keep them all, but these are basically the platforms we target, right? So you have Android, you have iOS. You have WebAssembly targeting the browser. You have Mac OS through the Catalyst, through Catalyst. So basically, it's an iOS app that's been mapped over to Mac OS. Windows itself. So you could still target. You could build Windows apps. You're building a WinUI app at its core anyway, right? So on Windows, Uno sort of just steps aside and lets WinUI do its thing, and then on the other platforms, that's when we come in, right? So if you're building a Windows app, you're building an Uno app. And then we have this interesting one called desktop. So this is where the Skia-based rendering is coming into play. So if you know about Flutter or other things like that, instead of having the native rendering widgets, the native rendering UI from each platform, you can just have a blank canvas, and Skia is a 2D based rendering engine that will just draw the application that as it looks, as it's defined, right? And so desktop, it's called desktop because it targets Mac OS, like true Mac OS through AppKit and everything. Windows, and you can have, it'll just launch like a WPF shell, and it'll host the Uno app inside with the Skia-based rendering, as well as Linux, right, through X11 and Frame Buffer. So we'll look at that in a little bit. When we go to presentation, you can have obviously no presentation framework. You can have MVVM, which this one will just bring in the Microsoft Community Toolkit MVVM library. And then we have our MVUX. MVUX is very big, so it's worth its own talk. So I would highly suggest going to the Uno docs and checking out the MVUX documentation. But basically, this is a take on our own presentation design pattern that combines the model view update sort of design pattern, but includes things for observability and data binding built right in. So it's very, very nice. Markup, we actually do have the ability. So I'm going to stay with XAML because XAML is my true love. But we do have C# markup, so you can use C# as your backend logic or your business logic, as well as the language to define your UI, and it's the same exact object model that the XAML is targeting. And so it looks very similar, right? Nothing's new, and it's just in a nice fluent way that you can describe your UI in like the Dart Flutter style, I guess. Theming is what I was talking about before. So out of the box, you get the fluent design theme for your application. So it kind of looks like what it would look like when you run on Windows. And so you can have your app look the same across all platforms, same across some platforms, different on each platform, native on each platform, or whatever you want. Just for ease of use right now, I'm going to have it look the same across all apps, all platforms, but it'll be using the Material Design System theme. And extensions. So this is the big kahuna where we have all these different modular chunks of functionality that you can include in your application, right? So I want to have dependency injection. I want to be able to load app settings from JSON files for configuration. I want to have some registration of HTTP clients into my IOC container, handle localization. Navigation is another thing. So you can do the native frame navigation from WinUI. We also have our own navigation framework where you can define regions, you can define routes, you can define deep links, complex URI patterns that you can actually link to different pages, and the structure will be built for you as you navigate. So really cool stuff. And then logging and other things. The only thing I wanted to show here, which I won't show in the application because there's I probably don't have too much time, but you do have the ability to say you are targeting some of the same platforms that MAUI targets. And yes, we do target some of the same platforms. We do target Linux and web as well. So the embedding wouldn't work on those platforms. But if you had MAUI controls or some sort of vendor that targets Android, iOS, Windows, using MAUI, you can actually embed MAUI controls and libraries into an Uno app within its own sort of little host. So it's really nice. And the last thing we're choosing here is Toolkit. So Toolkit is what I mentioned before. It comes with a bunch of behaviors and helper classes and additional complex controls that are built with multi-platform in mind, right? So we'll not go through the rest. So you just more stuff that you can set up with your application. So if we create this and give it a second, we'll look into our first Uno app and then we'll run it. I'll just give it a second to load. And as it's doing that, actually, you'll know that that was actually a Uno application. That wizard was an Uno application, right? So that means it targets more than just Windows, which we were looking at. So if I were to go to new Uno platform, new platform.uno, it's actually the same exact app, but now running in the browser, right? And so there's a little bit of a different experience, like you give your project name here instead of the VS menus. But it's the same exact thing. I can create all my stuff. And when I click create, it gives me actually the .NET CLI command that I would use locally to actually boot that all up, because we do have the Uno templates as part of the .NET new CLI as well. So that's just another interesting thing that you can do with the wizard. But here is our app. So this is what an Uno app looks like. So it's a single project, and we have all the bells and whistles installed. So there's more folders and stuff here that you'd usually have if you just had a blank app. But we can take a look at our CS Proj, and you'll notice that it's pretty small, right? So we don't have any package references. We don't have anything like that. It's just, how many lines is it? Oh, I don't have my line numbers in it. Anyway, it's like, I don't know, 20, 30 lines. And so the real magic happens here, right? So we have these list of features, and we could say, okay, I want to use material. I want to use toolkit. I'm going to use MVUX. I'm going to use, navigation, whatever. And so this is all known to the project system through our Uno SDK. So the Uno SDK knows it's version specific, and it knows for this version of the SDK, whichever is the latest stable, it knows which NuGet packages to pull in for all those features that you'd want to use as well. Of course, you could still add different package references as you want, but it is a nice feature-based SDK system that comes into play. So it really cleans up your CS Proj. So it's very nice. And now we can take a look. So you see here we have our our platform folders. So this is basically your injection point for native code, if you wish. So if you have something native or specific to a certain platform and you want to access the native way of doing it, like, I don't know, you have local mobile notifications for your app for Android and iOS. Well, then here you still have access to your app delegates, right? You still have access to your Android main activity and all that stuff. So that's all still available and exposed for you. So you can hook into anything you'd want. But today I'm going to be showing you why you don't need to do that too often, because we do have a lot of stuff that is built in a cross-platform way, right? So you don't have to worry too much about that. So we're just going to run this. I'm going to run it on the desktop, target. And so what the desktop is, remember, is it's just going to launch a small WPF shell. And then within that, and depending on which platform you're running on, right? So I'm on Windows. And within that shell, it's going to have Skia-based rendering. So it's just going to draw pixel by pixel what the app should look like, right? So it's not going to be using the native, Windows rendering or anything like that for the widgets. It opened. Where did it open? The app is running, and I cannot find it. Oh, there. Open on my other screen. So this is an Uno app, right? So I'll move this little indicator over here, and we'll pop this over here, and we'll this one. Okay. So this is our Uno app, right? So if I go to our main page in my Visual Studio, you'll see that this is basically what it looks like. So this is just normal WinUI XAML that you're looking at right now. And we should have everything set up. So if I were to type this in and go to second page, it passes that data to my second page and it displays it on the screen. You can go ahead and dive into more of the code. I don't have enough time. So this is using all the bells and whistles, like I mentioned. So navigation frameworks and presentation frameworks, so you could see how that data is passed from page to page and how navigation is triggered and how it loads up those things as navigation parameters and things like that. But you do have these nice things, right? So I can change this button content to say, hello, we are devs. Oh, no. And we'll give it a second to rebuild. But basically, as this app is running, I can perform some hot reload things, and you'll see it here. You'll see that it actually did. Hot reload as this app is currently running on the computer as well. And you'll see that this little indicator here that floats around is actually our hot reload indicator. So it popped up a little toast saying hot reload had occurred. And you can open this up and look at the history of events of hot reload and what messages came through. If something didn't work, it'll show it here for diagnostic reasons. So it's a nice little thing. And you'll notice too that the state was kept on this page. So this button changed content, but this was still filled out with whatever data was on it before the hot reload occurred. So some cool little features. This is what an Uno app looks like basically on Windows. If I were to close this and open this, you can, oh, hey, there you go. You can run this on whatever you'd like, right? So you can run this, that's the same desktop application, so same Skia-based rendering, but used using the Windows subsystem for Linux. So it's actually going to run as a Linux application and be brought onto the screen through X11, as well as Windows, but you can do NetIOS, Mac Catalyst, NetIOS, the browser, Android, all these things. So this is how you would sort of jump between these target frameworks. And this will look and behave the same across all these platforms, right? So if we went back to, oh, that's not what I wanted to show. No. Yes. So yeah. So that is basically, so where I went to before was new platform Uno. So you can check that out. There's a nice way to bootstrap your application as you go. And so we showed a lot about UI APIs and how Uno platform implements those across all those targets, right? But not only do we implement the UI APIs coming from Windows, we also implement the non-UI APIs from Windows. So like the Windows runtime APIs, basically. And we developed them in a new cross-platform way that they weren't ever, like, it's crazy what we did with it. So These runtime APIs cover a lot of grounds, from things like accelerometers to clipboards, game pads, flashlights, geolocation, so all those types of things, right? And so this is all done without needing any platform-specific code. So if you were to go here, I'll put these slides up somewhere. I'm assuming I can share it to someone. But if you go to this website, which we'll go to now, Unexpected APIs, we'll have some cool stuff to show. And then I'll wrap it up because I've been spending too much time on stuff. So here is just a small Uno application that was built by one of our engineers and amazing people, Martin Zickman. So we can do things like anything that you'd want to do that's not UI related, but backend stuff, device specific things. We can check if we have connectivity, right? Like if I were to disable, yes. If I were to disable and check, it would now think that I'm offline. I can observe connectivity and go back online, and it should, notice that. And so things like that. And the little code snippet is basically this. So like these 6 lines or whatever are basically how all that just happened. Things like geolocation. And so it does it natively on each platform, and it does it properly by doing things like first waiting for permissions. And if I were on Android or iOS or whatever, it would show the native UI for asking for permission for location or whatever permission is needed on the device that you're running on, right? So once I allowed it, it'll eventually show my my geolocation. One of the cool things like this, and again, it should ask for some permissions first. Yes, it will. Okay, allow. Hello, testing 1, 2, 3. And so there you go. So we get some cool speech recognition straight from the Windows runtime APIs that works cross-platform in the browser. The last one I'll show, just because I'm running out of time a little bit, is the gamepad, right? So I can even access things that are connected to my device. So wait, how am I going to do this like this? So you'll see that it's actually detecting what I'm doing on my Xbox controller. So this is my Xbox controller connected to USB to my machine, coming through the web browser, and I'm able to observe that all happening, right? So it's really, really cool stuff. So there's a whole bunch of non-UI APIs. And sometimes they don't, sometimes some of them are hard to do in cross-platform ways. Sometimes we find cool ways to make it work, right? So like the title bar APIs. So the title bar for Windows, usually, you know what I mean? It's the little thing at the top there. That you really don't have that same idea for, say, a web application, right? But you do have your tab titles, right? So if I were to set this title, you'll actually notice that the tab that I have open is changed to that title. So that's how we've mapped certain APIs that weren't originally built for certain platforms. That's how we, thought of different ways how they can map to different things on different platforms. So interesting stuff. So, and the last thing I just wanted to get everyone to take a look at, because it's open, it's in the public, it's for people to take a look at, is a nice case study that we've done. So a modernization of the NuGet Package Explorer. So the NuGet Package Explorer, back in the day, I think it used to be like an old WPF app or something. And you'd be able to search for NuGet packages. It would pull them down. You could be able to look inside in the DLLs and look at the PDBs and stuff like that. So what's interesting is you can actually go to NuGet.org. Right now, I just searched for the Newtonsoft one, and you should have down here a Open a NuGet Package Explorer link. So if I click that, you'll notice that this looks a little familiar. That's an Uno application that's running and hosted. And the only thing that changed is instead of NuGet.org, you go to NuGet.info. And this is an Uno application running. I can adjust the UI as I so wish. And you can inspect the package, right? So you can go to this DLL. Let's pull this back up. And you could take a look at all the information that you want to look at within NuGet Package Explorer. So that is a nice little modernization case study. We have a write-up of it, I believe, on our website. And we have some other case studies as well if you want to see like how this can be used for app modernization, how this can be used for bringing old Windows WPF apps or whatever to the web for modernization and things like that. So A lot of great stuff in there. And that was a whirlwind, but I think I did it in time. So yeah, I just want to, I spit through a lot of stuff, so I do want to mention, go to the website, go to the documentation. There is a lot there, a lot that I wasn't able to cover, but some really great stuff that's work that deserves their own talk. But the number one thing to do is, yeah, try Uno Platform. You can go to the website at platform.uno. Number two, the most important, I think, is join our Discord. So go to that link, platform.uno/Discord. You will get onto our server. It has like, I don't know, 800 people now or something like that. And it's just amazing. So we're all there helping people out. The community is also there, asking questions, helping each other out. And it's a really, really great environment. So I would highly suggest coming, hanging out with us there. And yeah, contribute on GitHub, report issues, discussions. If you want to help out and look at some good first issues to pick up on our GitHub, we'd always love to collaborate. So that is it for me. So thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the chance to be able to talk about Uno with everyone, and I hope you learned something. So yeah, so thank you very much.
That was great, Steve. Just a little bit off topic. Whereabouts are you, Steve? Because I'm always curious, you know, about what time it is for you.
Yeah, I'm in. The sun just came up. I'm in Kingston, Ontario. So like I'm in Canada, right in the middle of Toronto and Montreal, like right between them. So it's what time is it? I don't know. I guess it's almost 8 now, 7:30 or something. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I did think that. I thought, wow, you're doing all that before breakfast. That's very impressive. Yeah. Hey, Steve, we've got just a few questions, which is great. Actually, we've got quite a few that we could ask, but you know, time will only allow for so much. I mean, I was, first of all, just to say, I was really impressed by it, actually, as somebody who, as I've said several times throughout the day, you know, I'm not from a .NET background. I've not used it. So I'm somebody who is very much on the outside. And that wizard that you were going through really, really appealed to me. Do you think it's a good place to start for somebody who says, look, I've not used .NET. I would like to maybe use Uno Platform to, because what it helped me to do was visualize what it would all look like and not forget anything, if you see what I mean, because it took you through every step right through to the UI, which is really the bit that I'm really interested in when I see that, you know. Do you think that's a good place to start, or would you advise that maybe people start somewhere else before they come to Uno? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so like I think it's a good place to see like what it's capable of doing, but in terms of like getting into the platform and things like that, so if you were to go to the docs and stuff like that, it would actually run you through the wizard as well. So it's a good start. But we do have a bunch of workshops and like step-by-step tutorials on like building your first .NET app, or like getting it to run on this platform, getting it to run. And it goes from simple to complex, right? So there's one that's just like a calculator app that's all built for you. And it just like, here's how to boot it up, all the way to an application that is a YouTube player, right? So it talks to the YouTube APIs, pulls down the videos, and like you're actually able to stream it. And so there's a couple of workshops in between those two things, but yeah, it walks you step by step, like how to build your first app, and it uses the wizard, of course, but it explains way more than I just did. So yeah. Yeah.
No, that's great. I mean, because that was going to be my next question, is about sort of scale. You know, is it something that you would advise for? Because we've seen this kind of come up as a trend, you know, throughout the .NET day, really, where you know, there's sometimes things that people say this is actually great at like the enterprise level when you've got lots of users and great complexity, and other people saying this is really good if you're looking for a small scale application that you're building on your own or in a small team. What do you think about Uno, where it would maybe be best situated?
Yeah, that's what I like about it is what I see interesting from our Discord and like from the community is like we're getting it from both sides, right? So like it's great for the enterprise like modernization stuff. So like we have a lot of clients and people that are coming being like, I have this clunky like app that's running and it has to be on a Windows 7 machine or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, and they want to modernize it. So it's basically, we don't change too much. It just gets put onto the web natively through WebAssembly, and then it's accessible everywhere. So it's a great modernization like tool. But we've also seen a lot of people like, again, like, you know, small teams or just individuals just building personal apps, just building things like that. And they've really pushed the boundaries. So like there's people that build games with it. There's people that build like this huge like League of Legends like manager application. Like it's just like insane the things that people are doing. So yeah, I definitely see it coming from both sides, but it's yeah, I think it's sort of like hits the middle there where it's accessible from both ends. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to know as well, because I think, you know, that it's always the concern everybody has, right? Is that you can use something up until a certain point and then you go,
Yeah.
okay, now, yeah, and it doesn't scale. But I think looking at it, I couldn't, obviously I've not drilled into it, but at least what you were showing, I thought, yeah, I could see how this could work at all kinds of different levels. And it's got that nice on ramp, you know, where, as you're saying, the documents, but also, you know, not just the documentation, but that wizard really helps you feel that. For somebody like me who looking at that, I say, whoa, there's such a learning curve.
Oh, yeah.
It feels like it could really take you on a kind of a nice pace, though, not sort of throwing you in the deep end and just saying read the docs. So I think that appealed to me, and of course the Discord server. We all know that that's actually a bit of a life, you know, it's a lifesaver, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So what about things that might still be missing? I know this is it's an awkward one, because, you know, we obviously don't, you know, we're not expecting you to say, no, it's absolutely perfect, because nothing ever is. But equally, I'm sure that there's nothing major that's missing, or you wouldn't be such an advocate for it. So is there anything that you think in Uno that you go, this would be nice, or this is on my wish list, and hopefully in the future it'll get taken on or produced?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are things that like need to be done still. So like, I don't know, I would say like, so the Skia base, it's interesting because we do have like the native bindings to all those different UI frameworks, but the Skia based rendering is like things like I mentioned, the YouTube player application. There's currently no support for like the media player on a Skia based application, right? Because like, I'm sure there's going to be a way to do it, but I don't know. So things like that, but as well as it's interesting because I was going to say, so there are a bunch of stuff that I see in other platforms or the things, or we think of them ourselves, and it's like, oh, this doesn't, like, how are we going to get this into Uno? And that's what the toolkit is really for, is for all these like extra helpers and behaviors and all these cool things like that. So I think there's always like, that's just going to be a giant repository of things we think of that would be cool to have, and there's always more to have there. So one of the great things, or one of the things that I think is really needed, and I guess this is more on the enterprise side, but we see lots of requests for it, is like some sort of data table, data grid component, right? And so I don't know if that would live in the toolkit or somewhere else. I know we do have support for the Windows Community Toolkit that does have a data grid, but it needs to continue to be maintained. So I'm not sure where it is at the stage of usability, like fully yet. But that is one thing that like a full-on that type of control would be really nice to have, especially on the enterprise side.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess it's always the way, isn't it? We've all got like a wish list, and it's just hoping there's enough people out there that think the same as us that it actually gets, you know, acted on. I suppose the last thing, because it was fascinating to see, and I think, you know, there could be a whole session just looking at the non-UI APIs. I mean, that must be so much fun to play with, though, right? That just going in and these are things that they would have never popped into my mind, I suppose, until you see how easy they are for you to pick up. Was that UI that you showed us, though? Would you say that was created by the team as a way of showcasing the non-UI APIs?
That application, yeah. So that application was actually, it was built by Martin, who's on our team and does a lot of talks and stuff like that. So, and he's been big into the non-UI APIs for a while. So he built this little application for demo purposes, but it's a really great. And so on the website, there's a whole section for non-UI, and it has basically a table of contents of all the Windows runtimes APIs and a matrix of what parts of it map to what on different platforms. So like the title bar APIs there also have the ability to say like, I want my title bar to be purple. So like, obviously that's not going to work on like things like WebAssembly. Like you can't change the tab color. So it's like things like that. It has a matrix of like what's good, what works on which platforms and what doesn't, what's supported. But yeah, there's just so much there, and it's really, really cool to like, then you get into like the nitty gritty, like, how do I get this on this native platform to do it? What APIs are available on this platform? You know, and you get to go like piece by piece and plug the little things in. You know, it's fun.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that was something else that popped into my head, is about, you know, it sounds great that you can work across, you know, or at least develop for different platforms, but yeah, how do you then, you know how do you test across those different platforms? But it sounds like aside from actually testing it, there's quite a lot in the documentation, like you're saying there, the table of contents that's at least going to give us that that matrix of what to expect, you know, before we even start testing. Yeah. So
and we do have we do have like a nice engine for UI testing, at least. So like it's right now it's based off Xamarin UI test, which is like going away. But we have this nice runtime test engine where you can actually just like run tests within a running app. So it's very nice to like use that to test functionalities across any platform, right? So it's coming soon. So that's another thing that was on the wish list that we're excited about. Yeah.
That's really exciting. And I think actually, interestingly, you know, one of the team in the background has actually said this could be a great Coffee with Developers episode talking about the project. And maybe that's what we'll do. We'll try and coincide it with the new testing features and see if we can drill down into it a little bit, because I think there's a lot of people that would be really interested to see a bit more of Uno platform. It's great.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay, Steve. Well, I'm going to let you go and get some breakfast because the sun's come up where you are in beautiful Canada. So I just want to say again a massive thank you for running your session today. It was fascinating, great insights, and yeah, we're looking forward to having you back again.
All right, thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks again, Steve. All right, so that was Steve Billigan, who was showing us the Uno platform. So yeah, 4 amazing sessions today, all very different in terms of the focal points around .NET, but I'm sure everybody else watching this has gotten a lot from it in terms of insights or tips and tricks. Some of the quirks that we looked at in .NET, we looked at C# 13 Unleashed, and that was a really great demo of looking at some of those features right at the start of the day. And also, we had you know, working his way through his session because he wasn't feeling that well, Ryan Nino Dizon, who did a great session on .NET Microservices in Azure Container Apps. And of course, Pavel Lukashuk, who was showing us some of those tips and tricks. So just a big thank you again to each of our speakers for their sessions, all of the planning that goes into it, the practicing, and you know, managing to deliver all of that content in a very short time frame. I think they all did fantastically well. So a big thank you to them. Just to finish up then our .NET Day with a few pointers, reminders, and other bits and bobs just to finish off with. So I'll share my screen for some of this. So I'll just very briefly show you what's coming up next. So as you know, we've got our season 8. Let's just check everything's there. We are. We've got our season 8 running up until the end of the year. And of course, we're done now with .NET Day. Very sad to be done with that. But in 2 weeks, we've got Python Day coming up. And then following on from there, you can see we've got Accessibility Day, we've got Machine Learning Day, and on the 11th of December, we've got Game Development Day, which will take us up to the end of 2024. And then, of course, you can expect lots more live days and some plans and you know, some great ideas coming for season 9, which is going to look a little bit different. So we're really excited to kind of share some of those with you when we finish this season. So keep an eye on wearedevelopers.com/live, and you'll see all of the information there, such as speakers and the subjects or the topics that you can expect us to be covering on those live days. So keep an eye out for that. We've also got, and again, I will share a different tab with you. We've also got just a reminder, if you didn't see it earlier on, that there's just 2 days to get yourself an early bird ticket for the WeAreDevelopers World Congress 2025. I can't believe we're nearly in 2025 already. So as you can see, the dates are already confirmed, the venue, everything's in the works already, and our team are working to start the plans really for the World Congress 2025. It takes a long time. There's a lot to do. So you can see the 9th till the 11th of July, and you can either use the discount code that you'll see in the comments, and you can get yourself 15% off tickets. And that's also, if you get tickets in the next 2 days, you're getting that early bird price plus your discount. So it's a great deal. If you want to go for free, then all you need to do is submit your response for the Code 100 challenge. So you'll have seen that a little bit earlier on in the session, and you'll see there's a link in the chat to the challenge as well. So remember, 2 winners will be winning themselves a place in the Code 100 grand finale, and as part of that, they get themselves a ticket to the World Congress. So 3 days, 15,000 developers, and you get to go for free if you're a Code 100 challenger. So that's not too bad, is it? To use the most British expression I can think of. Okay, so just to finish up, we just want to say a big thank you again, not just to our speakers, but also to our partners. So we've got our Thessaloniki, and I will be able to say that in one go by the end of this week. Let's see. So Thessaloniki, the Thessaloniki.net meetup group. Thank you again for sponsoring this .NET Day. And also a shout out to Black in Tech Berlin, who are running the Black in Tech Europe Summit, so Bytes. And again, you can get a discount code to that in the chat. Okay, I think that brings us up to the end of the day. So just to say again, thank you to everybody for watching this. Please do keep an eye on WeAreDevelopers.com, because we'll be sharing the tips and tricks in video and blog format, as well as some blog articles about some of the sessions that you've seen today. So there's going to be lots of content coming out. And of course, at the end of this week, we've got the Dev Digest as always. So if you're not currently subscribed, join the 150,000 plus other developers across Europe that are currently subscribed to the Dev Digest. And you can subscribe for yourself at wearedevelopers.com/Dev Digest. So keep an eye on socials. Tomorrow, I'll be putting out my Dev Digest roundup. It gives you a little bit of a sneak peek of what to expect. And in that newsletter on Friday, of course, you're going to get 3 or maybe 4 sneak peeks, so early access links to some of the World Congress sessions that you may or may not have missed from the World Congress 2024. So there's lots happening at We Are Developers. Keep an eye on our website. And if I don't see you before, I'll see you in 2 weeks on the 30th of October for Python Day. Thanks again. I've been your host, Dan, and we'll see you soon. Take care.